Chapter 1. I didn't expect to become a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple. Su Qin opened his eyes, got up quickly, and walked towards the door. Su Qin was not from this world. He came from Earth. Originally, Su Qin was not a disciple of the Shaolin Temple. His original transmigrator was the third young master of the family Su. The family Su was a local rich family with countless masters. The master of the family was a level 6 master, and his power spread far and wide. Unfortunately, when Su Qin was 10 years old, that is, a few days ago, a great enemy of the Su family came and injured the Su family patriarch with a raise of his hand. In order to preserve their bloodline, the family Su had no choice but to disperse their disciples. Su Qin was secretly sent to the Shaolin Temple. In order to avoid being rejected by the Shaolin Temple, the family Su did not expose Su Qin's identity. Instead, they sent him to the Shaolin Temple as an orphan. The Shaolin Temple had a deep heritage. Even though it had declined in recent years, it was not something that the enemy of the family Su could deal with. As long as Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple, he would be safe. In fact, Su Qin did succeed in entering the Shaolin Temple. However, because he had no martial arts aptitude, he could only be assigned to the chores yard and become a sweeping monk. Su Qin walked out of the door. At the moment, there were dozens of young acolytes in gray robes standing outside. Su Qin walked over and stood somewhere in the back. Okay, since you have entered the Shaolin Temple, the past has nothing to do with you. At this moment, a monk with a wide face and big ears spoke. Although the chores yard is not as good as the Dharma court or the warrior monastery, it is peaceful and quiet. As long as you do your daily chores well, no one will disturb you. The monk with a wide face and big ears paused for a moment before continuing. Let's disperse and do what we need to do today. The dozens of little novice monks left one after another. Su Qin took the broom and walked towards the grand hall of Shaolin Temple. Although Su Qin was a sweeping monk, Su Qin was not the only sweeping monk in the Shaolin Temple. The Shaolin Temple was one of the world's great martial arts sections. It occupied a large area. If it was left to Su Qin to clean up, it would take more than a year to clean it up. Su Qin was in charge of the area near the Great Strength Hall. Soon, Su Qin arrived in front of the Great Strength Hall, gazing at the majestic hall. As one of the most important places in the Shaolin Temple, every corner of the Great Buddha's hall was filled with majesty. Su Qin stood outside the Hall of Great Strength and could vaguely see the golden body of Buddha enshrined inside. Suddenly, a mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Detected that the host's current location meets the sign-in conditions. System is activating. Activation successful. The host can sign in today. System. Sign in. Su Qin's pupils shrank slightly. In a flash, Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. He asked tentatively in his heart, "Must I sign in here?" Anywhere in the world, the host can sign in as long as there is a remnant of Taoist connotation. Note: you can only sign in once a day. Places where the Taoist connotation is thicker will get better rewards for signing in. You can sign in repeatedly in some places. The mechanical and indifferent voice slowly sounded in Su Qin's ears. Taoist connotation? Su Qin muttered to himself. He roughly knew what the system meant. Not every place met the sign-in conditions. For example, the family Su where Su Qin lived for 10 years didn't have the Taoist connotation mentioned by the system, so the system couldn't be activated. And the Mahavira Hall, as the important place of the Shaolin Temple where the Buddha's golden body is enshrined, there is Taoist connotation, which meets the sign-in conditions of the system. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and his face flashed with joy. Originally, Su Qin thought that he would spend the rest of his life as a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple. After all, the Shaolin Temple is not a place where anyone can enter and leave casually. Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple as an orphan, which is equivalent to selling himself to the Shaolin Temple. If he wants to return to the secular world, he needs at least the consent of a head of the temple. But this is basically impossible. What is the status of the head of the temple? Why would he care about Su Qin, a mere sweeping monk? Besides, if every monk agreed to return to the secular world, the Shaolin Temple would have been empty long ago. Even if the family Su repelled the enemy and restored their former status, it is simply impossible to persuade a head of the Shaolin Temple. Although the family Su is a local noble family, the Shaolin Temple was once a world-famous martial arts sect. and the founder of Arhat. The two are not on the same level at all. Even the enemy who forced the family Su to disperse the disciples of the family, in order to preserve the bloodline inheritance, is not worth mentioning in front of the Shaolin Temple. Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple, and although he completely got rid of the enemy's pursuit, but at the same time, he will be trapped in the Shaolin Temple for the rest of his life. But now the sign-in system gave Su Qin hope. "System, give me a sign-in." Su Qin calmed down and said in his heart. The next moment, "Congratulations to the host, sign-in successful. You have received the Divine Art Buddha's palm." The system prompt sounded in Su Qin's ears. Buddha's palm. Su Qin took a deep breath. If Su Qin remembered correctly, Buddha's palm is the strongest divine art of the Shaolin Temple, and it is known as the Buddha's personal inheritance. The moment Su Qin received Buddha's palm, buzz. Above the great Buddha's hall, a huge golden Buddha appeared, with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground, majestic and heavy. "In heaven and earth only I am supreme." The Buddha's aura diffused, illuminating the entire Shaolin Temple, as if it contained countless truths. At this moment the Shaolin Temple shook, and countless monks knelt on the ground, chanting, "Buddha has shown himself." Swish, swish, swish. At the same time, several figures quietly appeared outside the great Buddha's hall. The person in the lead was wearing a red cassock and holding a 9-ringed monk's staff. It was the Shaolin Temple's abbot, Hui Wen. The other several people were the heads of the various sections. At this moment everyone, including Abbot Hui Wen, was shocked as they looked at the huge golden Buddha above the great Buddha's hall. "Namo Amitba." Abbot Hui Wen bowed to the huge golden Buddha, and the other heads did the same. "Namo Amitba." After a while, the Buddha's aura slowly dissipated. Abbot Hui Wen only dared to raise his head when the Buddha's aura had completely disappeared. Such a strong Buddha's aura. Abbot Hui Wen's heart was in turmoil. He was not only the abbot of the Shaolin Temple, but also a world-renowned martial arts expert. The golden Buddha that appeared just now was completely condensed from Buddha's aura. It should be known that even an existence at the level of an arhat has far less Buddha nature than the golden Buddha from before. Could it be that a disciple has really gained the favor of the Buddha? That's why the Buddha's aura descended? Abbot Hui Wen looked inside the great Buddha's hall at the many disciples who were serving the Buddha's golden body. The great Buddha's hall was an important place of the Shaolin Temple, and there were disciples serving it at all times. If a disciple had really gained the favor of the Buddha, it could only be among these disciples. The other heads also thought of this, and suddenly, their eyes changed as they looked at the disciples in the great Buddha's hall. Since the last a holy monk passed away 60 years ago, the Shaolin Temple had not given birth to another a holy monk. As a result, the Shaolin Temple's position in the world of martial arts rapidly declined. If a disciple had gained such a huge amount of Buddha's aura, not to mention a holy monk, even attaining Arhat's Buddhahood would be a piece of cake. Thinking of this, the court heads' hearts began to burn. "You guys back down. Without the permission of the heads, don't come near." The head of the warrior monastery had a fiery temper. He looked at Su Qin and the other Chores Hall disciples who were pale and waved his hand. Yes, the Chores Hall disciples looked at each other and turned to leave. The other heads and Abbot Hui Wen saw this and did not stop them. Chapter 2. It's the Buddha's palm. Along the way, Su Qin was excited, but he didn't show it on his face. This was the most powerful martial art of the Shaolin Temple, known as the Buddha's palm. There were only a few people in the world who could compete with it. However, Su Qin had heard other rumors. As early as 900 years ago, the Buddha's palm had been lost. The Shaolin Temple had lost this most powerful martial art. Su Qin's thoughts were in turmoil. As the former third young master of the family Su Qin had no martial arts aptitude, but he still had some understanding of the world's situation. Whether it was the Shaolin Temple or the family Su Qin was in, they were all in an empire called the Tang Dynasty. In the Tang Dynasty, the righteous and the evil were at odds with each other. To the north of the Tang Dynasty were the Song Dynasty and the Liao Dynasty. Outside the Liao Dynasty was the Meng Yuan Empire, which occupied the endless grasslands. To the south of the Tang Dynasty was the Ming Empire. In addition, there were many small countries such as Dali and Nanzhao. It could be said that this world was a combination of the countless martial arts worlds in Su Qin's previous life. Soon Su Qin returned to the chores yard. Buzz! Su Qin's mind entered the center of his eyebrows. He felt a huge golden Buddha standing in the center of his eyebrows, exuding an immortal and eternal aura. It was the Buddha's palm. With Su Qin's current physical strength, he couldn't withstand the supreme martial art of the Buddha's palm. He could only condense this golden Buddha and let Su Qin slowly comprehend it. To completely master the Buddha's palm, Su Qin's strength had to reach a certain level. It was like a baby getting a peerless divine sword. First, he had to have the strength to lift the peerless divine sword before he could master it. No rush, take it slow. Su Qin comforted himself in his heart. Anyway, the Buddha's palm was already in his hands. As long as Su Qin's strength reached a certain level, using the Buddha's palm would be a matter of course. Moreover, this was only the reward Su Qin received for the first time. In the Shaolin Temple, the Mahavira Hall was one of the most important places, but there were also places comparable to the Mahavira. For example, the various courtyards, the Sutra Pavilion, the Demon Subduing Tower, and so on. Su Qin has decided that he will visit every place in the Shaolin Temple in the future, and strive not to miss any opportunity to sign in. The next day, Su Qin's Sutra was Sutra. In fact, this was normal. If a mere sweeping monk could read the books in the Sutra's depository, wouldn't it mean that there was no one left in the Shaolin Temple? System, sign in. Su Qin muttered to himself as he swept the floor. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the cultivation technique I Jing Jing. Note: this is a repeatable sign-in location. The host can sign in once a day. The sound of the system notification came slowly. Oh, I Jing Jing, Su Qin was amazed. Although the I Jing Jing wasn't as famous as the Buddha's palm, it was definitely one of the world's most miraculous martial arts. Cultivating the tendon-changing scripture could change one's tendons and remove one's hair, changing one's bone structure. To Su Qin, an ordinary person without any martial arts aptitude, this was even more important than the Buddha's palm. Although the level of the Buddha's palm far surpassed that of the I Jing Jing, if the I Jing Jing hadn't changed Su Qin's martial aptitude, he wouldn't even have had the chance to use the Buddha's palm. In an instant, a large number of memories of cultivating the I Jing Jing appeared in Su Qin's mind. At the same time, Su Qin's bone structure slowly emitted a kacha-kacha sound. Obviously, under the infusion of the system, Su Qin directly grasped all the key points of cultivating the I Jing Jing. After a long time, Su Qin opened his eyes. Su Qin looked at his hands in disbelief. Su Qin could clearly feel that there was a faint aura flowing between his limbs and bones. Internal force? I've entered the grade? Su Qin muttered. In this world, martial arts from low to high are divided into 9 grades to 1 grade. 9th grade is the lowest and 1st grade is the highest. 9th grade to 7th grade are the lower 3 realms, 6th grade to 4th grade are the middle 3 realms, and 3rd grade to 1st grade are the upper 3 realms. The reason why the family Su could become a local wealthy family was because the head of the family Su had entered the middle 3 realms and became a 6th grade martial artist. And Su Qin now had internal force, which meant that he had already entered the 9th grade. It's worthy of being called the world's most amazing martial arts. I've just started and I'm already at the 9th grade. Su Qin was overjoyed. One must know that he was an ordinary person without any martial arts aptitude. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to become a martial artist. But now the I Jing Jing had turned something rotten into something magical, and directly allowed Su Qin to enter the 9th grade. Of course, this was mainly because the system had instilled all the key points of the I Jing Jing into Su Qin's mind, allowing him to completely master the I Jing Jing. Otherwise, even if the complete I Jing Jing was placed in front of Su Qin might not be able to understand it. Buddhist martial arts were known for being obscure and difficult to understand, let alone an amazing martial art like the I Jing Jing. On the 3rd day, Su Qin was assigned to sweep the floor of the Bodhi Court. Among the courts of the Shaolin Temple, the Bodhi Court had the least number of monks. Other courts, such as the Warrior Monastery and the Arhat Court, had to recruit a large number of disciples every year. But the Bodhi Court was different. Throughout the year, there were almost no new faces added to the Bodhi court. But even so, the Bodhi court's position in the Shaolin Temple was still unshakable, because the Shaolin Temple's small revitalizing pill, great revitalizing pill, marrow cleansing pill, and even the Bodhi pill all came from the Bodhi court. Who in the martial arts world didn't know about the Shaolin Temple's small revitalizing pill and great revitalizing pill? A place rich in pills? Su Qin's eyes flashed slightly, and he said in his heart, "System, sign in here." Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Received the pill, small revitalizing pill. Note: this is a repeatable sign-in location. The host can sign in once a day. Suddenly, an ancient pill appeared in the system space. As long as Su Qin was willing, he could take out this bottle of pills at any time. But Su Qin forcibly stopped this idea. This was outside the Bodhi court. If Su Qin suddenly took out a bottle of small revitalizing pill, it was very likely to attract attention. At night, after confirming that there was no one nearby, Su Qin took out the small revitalizing pill. Suddenly, a snow-white pill appeared in front of Su Qin. The Shaolin Temple's small revitalizing pill had the miraculous effect of opening up the muscles and bones and increasing one's strength. The Shaolin Temple was able to maintain its position as a major martial arts sect after losing the most powerful divine skill, the Buddha's palm. Su Qin looked at the round small revitalizing pill, his eyes shining. After practicing I Jing Jing, Su Qin was tortured by hunger almost all the time. The vegetarian food provided by the Shaolin Temple could not satisfy Su Qin's needs at all. If this continued, Su Qin would probably still be a 9th-stage martial artist 10 years later. Martial arts cultivation was about refining essence into qi. Without a sufficient supply of essence qi, there would be no benefit. But with the small revitalizing pill, everything was different. The small revitalizing pill was originally refined with various precious herbs. It was simple to replenish Su Qin's consumption. Gulp. Su Qin swallowed the small revitalizing pill. The small revitalizing pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth, forming a huge heat flow that rushed to every corner of Su Qin's body. With the continuous integration of the heat flow, the internal strength of I Jing Jing grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. After an unknown amount of time, the internal strength that had skyrocketed by a large amount rumbled, as if it had touched a bottleneck, and began to slowly calm down. Peak 9th stage. A single small revitalizing pill pushed me to the peak of the 9th stage? Chapter 3. I Jing Jing, as a unique skill of the Shaolin Temple, is known for its strong foundation. As long as I practice step by step, it's only a matter of time before I enter the upper realm. Other disciples, even the court heads, have to be careful when practicing I Jing Jing, for fear of misunderstanding its true meaning. But I'm different. With the system's installation, it's equivalent to taking a strategically advantageous position. It's impossible for me to go astray. Su Qin converged his aura and didn't rush to break through. Instead, he stabilized his peak grade 9 realm. The internal force of the peak grade 9 realm slowly circulated in his body, making Su Qin's eyes and ears clear. He could clearly see a reptile dozens of meters away. Martial Dao cultivation is essentially the path of human evolution. It is recorded in the ancient books that martial artists in the upper realm have already set foot in developing their own potential. Every martial artist in the upper realm is unique. Even in the Shaolin Temple, martial artists in the upper realm are enough to serve as court heads. It is said that there is a wider world above the upper realm. Su Qin leisurely yearned for it. However, I must keep the matter of becoming a grade 9 martial artist a secret. Su Qin's heart tightened. An ordinary man is innocent, but a treasure is a crime. As a transmigrator, how could Su Qin not know this truth? Although the Shaolin Temple claims to be righteous, Su Qin will not put his life in the hands of the Shaolin Temple. Thinking of this, Su Qin became vigilant and made up his mind. In the future, he must be careful in the Shaolin Temple to avoid unnecessary trouble. Time passed. 5 years passed in a blink of an eye. In the past 5 years, Su Qin had been doing his job and sweeping the floor in a well-behaved manner. There was not a single wave. However, Su Qin heard that several disciples of the handyman court, because they were secretly learning martial arts, were discovered and caused the anger of the court head. who directly expelled them from the Shaolin Temple. Expelled from the Shaolin Temple? If it was before entering the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin would be tempted and think about whether he could return to the secular world through this method. After all, life in the Shaolin Temple is too boring. How can it be as carefree as the third young master of the family Su? But now, even if the court heads and Abbot Huiwen knelt in front of Su Qin and begged him to leave the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin would refuse without hesitation. For others, the Shaolin Temple is a shackle. But in the eyes of the Shaolin Temple, by Shaolin Temple is Shaolin Temple. Every day, as long as he swept the floor and signed in, he would be able to obtain all kinds of secret manuals and elixirs. His strength would also soar. Where can you Shan? In the past 5 years, Su Qin visited the entire Shaolin Temple in the name of sweeping the floor. Except for a few forbidden areas, Su Qin basically signed in everywhere in the Shaolin Temple. Outside the Dharma court, Su Qin signed in and received marrow cleansing scripture, golden bell shield, and other secret techniques. Outside the warrior monastery, Su Qin signed in and received Arhat fist, demon subduing fist, and other secret techniques. Outside the Arhat temple, Su Qin signed in and received Vajra unbreakable divine art. Signing in under a 1,000-year-old ancient tree in the Shaolin temple, Su Qin received flower pinching finger. Signing in outside the demon subduing tower, Su Qin received nether scripture, absorbing stars great technique, and other secret techniques. After 5 years of signing in, Su Qin discovered that most places in the Shaolin Temple could only sign in once or a few times. For example, the Great Strength Hall. Ever since Su Qin signed in there for the first time and received Buddha's palm, he couldn't sign in there anymore. But there were some places where he could sign in repeatedly. For example, the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion, the Bodhi Courtyard, and the Demon Subduing Tower. In the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion, Su Qin would receive various secret techniques. For example, Su Qin had already signed in to the 72 secret techniques of the Shaolin Temple. He had already signed into them by the system and cultivated them to perfection. As for the Bodhi Courtyard, Su Qin didn't know how many pills he had signed in. Small recovery pill, great recovery pill, marrow cleansing pill, Bodhi pill. Among them, the effect of the great recovery pill was about 10 times that of the small recovery pill. The marrow cleansing pill cleansed the muscles and marrow and tempered the body. It was very beneficial for Su Qin's cultivation of the Vajra unbreakable divine art. There was also the Demon Subduing Tower. The Demon Subduing Tower was the place where the eminent monks of the Shaolin Temple suppressed the demons of the world. Su Qin usually signed in here for some demonic techniques. Over time, Su Qin was too lazy to come here. After all, although some demonic techniques are indeed unique, it would be troublesome if the abbot and the head abbot noticed that he was cultivating demonic techniques in the Shaolin Temple. Besides, the strength of the demons who can be suppressed in the Demon Subduing Tower is only so, and almost none of them are in the upper realm. Even if Su Qin came here every day to sign in, he wouldn't gain much. It's better to put the sign-in opportunities in the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion and the Bodhi Courtyard. In 5 years, in addition to receiving a lot of sign-in rewards, Su Qin's cultivation base reached the 4th grade. 4th grade. He was already at the peak of the middle realm, only one step away from the upper realm. Even in a great sect like the Shaolin Temple, a 4th grade martial artist is only second to the head abbot and the head abbot. Ordinary martial artists, no matter how terrifying their talent is, it would take 20 years of hard work to cultivate to the 4th grade. And this is based on the continuous supply of resources from the outside world. But Su Qin only took 5 years, to be precise, less than 5 years. Su Qin officially entered the 4th grade a year ago. 5 years have passed. Presumably the family Su should have almost recovered, right? Su Qin walked to the front of the Beauty Courtyard and said in his heart, "System, sign in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the Great Recovery Pill." Great Recovery Pill? Su Qin nodded slightly. After his strength reached the 4th grade, the small recovery pill was basically useless to Su Qin. Only the Great Recovery Pill and the Beauty Pill could increase Su Qin's strength. Click, click. Su Qin casually poured a bottle of Great Recovery Pill into his mouth and swallowed it as if he was chewing candy. If other people saw that the Great Recovery Pill was called the holy medicine of the Shaolin Temple, even the Beauty Courtyard couldn't produce many Great Recovery Pills in a year. But a sweeping monk like Su Qin swallowed it, they would probably be heartbroken. Father and mother should be doing well now. With big brother and second brother, they don't need me. As early as the first year of entering the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin received a letter from family Su that they had defeated the enemy and were basically safe. It was precisely because of this that Su Qin was able to sign in at the Shaolin Temple for 5 years with peace of mind. During this period, family Su told Su Qin more than once that they were trying to get him out of the Shaolin Temple. But every time they were righteously rejected by Su Qin. Not to mention how family Su could persuade the Shaolin Temple. Even if they could really make the Shaolin Temple release him, Su Qin was still unwilling to leave. At noon, Su Qin was about to prepare a vegetarian meal. When he passed by the Arhat courtyard, he found many monks gathered there, whispering about something. After Su Qin approached, he realized that there were disciples who wanted to break through the bronze array of the Arhat courtyard. Chapter 4. In front of the Arhat Hall, many Shaolin Temple disciples were talking about it. Senior brother Zhenxing is a genius of our Arhat yard. He has reached level 8 a few days ago. He will have no problem breaking through the 18 bronze men array. Yes, senior brother Zhenxing is a disciple valued by the head of Arhat yard. It is said that he has been advised by the abbot. Zhenxing. Su Qin thought for a while and finally remembered. Zhenxing was a disciple of the Shaolin Temple at the same time as Su Qin. They both belonged to the Zhen generation. However, Zhenxing's martial arts aptitude was excellent. He was valued by the head of Arhat yard and accepted into the Arhat yard personally. As for Su Qin, he was thrown into the chores yard because he had no martial arts aptitude. It could be said that Zhenxing and Su Qin represented the two extremes of the Shaolin Temple disciples. The former was dazzling, while the latter was unknown. Senior brother Zhenxing entered the Shaolin Temple for only 5 years and reached level 8. Maybe he will become the head of a yard in the future. A young acolyte of 12 or 13 years old said enviously. He had entered the Shaolin Temple for 2 or 3 years, but he was still training his muscles and bones. He had not even touched the door of level 9, let alone level 8. Su Qin was silent beside him. If the disciples next to him knew that the Zhenxing that they worshipped and admired was left far behind by Su Qin, their eyeballs would probably pop out. Zhenxing was a level 8 martial artist. But Su Qin was already a level 4 martial artist. There were 4 big realms between the two. Even 1,000 Zhenxings together would not be enough to be suppressed by Su Qin. In martial arts practice, the gap was bigger at the later stage. Maybe 10 level 9 martial artists could fight against 1 level 8. But 10 level 5 martial artists could fight against 1 level 4 martial artist. It was no different from a fool's dream. Su Qin was not interested in Zhenxing. What Su Qin was concerned about was that the Bronze Man array in the Arhat Academy had the effect of helping the disciples test their strength. Su Qin had mastered all kinds of unique skills and divine skills of the Shaolin Temple, and his strength had reached the terrifying level 4, but he had never fought with anyone. Although he knew that he had stepped into rank 4, he had no idea what kind of destructive power rank 4 possessed. Su Qin only knew that he was very strong, but he had no idea how strong he was. Come over tonight when there's no one around. Su Qin turned around and left. Late at night, Su Qin took advantage of the moonlight and came to the front of the array of bronze men. Begin. Su Qin did not say a word and directly charged into the formation. The bronze men in the bronze man array were mechanical creations and not real people. Furthermore, there was no one guarding the bronze man array. It was because of this that Su Qin decided to test his strength here. 18 figures whose bodies were as hard as copper and iron quickly surrounded him. Too weak and too slow. Su Qin shook his head slightly. With a thought he pointed out a finger, like Buddha smiling while holding a flower. Flower-pinching finger. Suddenly, the 18 bronze men retreated and fell to the ground. During the day, Zhenxing spent a lot of effort to break through the 18 bronze man array. In front of Su Qin, it did not even last a moment. Strength is too weak to have the effect of testing. Su Qin continued to walk inside. After the 18 bronze man array, it was the 36 bronze man array. A level 8 martial artist could break through the 18 bronze man array, but to continue to break through the 36 bronze man array, one had to be at least level 7. As for the 72 bronze man array, One could not try it unless one was a level 6 martial artist. Generally speaking, only a level 5 martial artist had the confidence to break through the 72 bronze man array. The last 108 bronze man array could only be activated by a level 4 martial artist. However, the 108 bronze man array contained Tiangang and Disha. It was left by a certain generation of a holy monk in the Shaolin Temple. An ordinary level 4 martial artist could not last long inside. Only those level 4 martial artists, or even close to level 3, could break through the 108 bronze man array. Rumble! Su Qin took a step forward. A terrifying internal force burst out. The 36 bronze man array that had just surrounded him broke almost at the touch. Next, Su Qin went deeper again. Whoosh! The next moment, 72 bronze-colored figures like ghosts appeared near Su Qin. 72 bronze man array? Su Qin was slightly disappointed. Compared to the 18 bronze man array and the 36 bronze man array, the 72 bronze man array was much faster. However, for Su Qin, the 72 bronze man array was just SOSO. There was no threat at all. Click. 72 bronze men flew out. There are only the last 108 bronze men left. Su Qin continued to go deeper. Suddenly, just as Su Qin entered the range of the 108 bronze man array, 108 figures appeared silently, and with the 108 heavenly spirits and earthly fiends, they turned into layers of inescapable nets and shrouded Su Qin. Under such circumstances, Su Qin seemed to not be facing the 108 bronze man array, but the world itself. Interesting. Su Qin's eyes lit up. Boom! In an instant, Su Qin collided with the 108 bronze man array. The 108 bronze man array carried the power of heaven and earth, crushing everything. But Su Chu was like an eternal golden Buddha. Buzz! Su Qin's skin faintly revealed a golden color. This was the embodiment of the invincible Vajra divine art, operating to the extreme. Invincible Vajra divine art is one of the strongest external techniques of the Shaolin Temple. When cultivated to the great success stage, the body alone is enough to challenge the martial artists of the upper realm. In the past 5 years, Su Qin had signed in thousands of baptizing marrow pills, but he only managed to improve this external technique to the great success stage. Originally, Su Qin thought that it would take at least a few years to truly cultivate invincible Vajra divine art to the great success stage. But now, under the sharpening of the 108 bronze man array, invincible Vajra divine art began to slowly improve again. Half an hour later. Ha 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 ha. Great. It's really great. Su Qin's pupils flashed with a dark golden color. He raised his right hand, and the 108 bronze man array exploded in an instant. The great success stage of invincible Vajra divine art. Only the great success stage of invincible Vajra divine art can break the 108 bronze man array. However, before Su Qin could rejoice, a magnificent bell rang leisurely. Ding! 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 The bell rang melodiously and deeply, resounding throughout the Shaolin Temple. Not good. I broke through the 108 bronze man array, and in the end I accidentally broke the 108 bronze man array. I should have touched a certain mechanism and triggered this bell. In a flash, Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly, and he quickly thought of the reason. I have to leave. Otherwise, I'm afraid the abbot and the others will come. Su Qin's thoughts moved, and he disappeared in place. Not long after Su Qin left, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads hurried over. What happened? Why did the bell of the bronze man array ring? Isn't the bell only sounded after the disciple broke through the 18 bronze men, 36 bronze men, 72 bronze men, and 108 bronze men array? The warrior monastery's court head was puzzled. To break through these 4 arrays in a row, one needs to be at least at the 4th stage. But they all know that the current 4th stage monks of the Shaolin Temple can't break through the bronze man array. However, when Abbot Huiwen and the court heads approached, their faces were suddenly shocked. Someone is breaking through the bronze man array. After Abbot Huiwen finished speaking, he quickly walked into the depths. The court heads looked at each other, and an incredible thought suddenly appeared in their minds. Is it possible that someone broke through the 4 arrays in a row and caused the bell to ring? Soon, when the court heads entered the 108 bronze man array, and saw the 108 bronze men broken into pieces, Their pupils suddenly shrank. Not only did someone break through the 108 bronze men array, but even the 108 bronze men were broken into pieces? How is this possible? One must know that breaking through the 108 bronze men array and breaking the 108 bronze men array are two different concepts. The latter is much more difficult than the former. Abbot Huiwen lowered his body and gently touched the pieces of the bronze men, feeling the aura flowing on the pieces. Invincible Yang Qi. This is the great accomplishment of the indestructible Vajra divine art. Chapter 5. Great accomplishment of invincible Vajra divine art? When the other court heads heard this, their eyes widened. Invincible Vajra divine art is a unique skill of the Shaolin Temple, and all the court heads present have practiced it. However, it is easy to get started with invincible Vajra divine art, but it is difficult to cultivate it. Simply put, it is 10 times harder to cultivate invincible Vajra divine art to great accomplishment than an ordinary person who is not even in grade 9 to the upper realm. Of course, once invincible Vajra divine art reaches great accomplishment, one can challenge an upper realm martial artist with their body alone. It's just that if one has the aptitude and energy to cultivate, wouldn't it be better to become an upper realm martial artist? Therefore, in the Shaolin Temple, invincible Vajra divine art is a relatively unpopular unique skill. Everyone knows that invincible Vajra divine art has great potential, but no disciple is willing to spend time on it, because the effort is not proportional to the harvest. Although the disciples of the Shaolin Temple are relatively dull, they are not fools. The warrior monastery head turned his eyes and looked at the Arhat court head. Well, the Arhat court hides deep enough. I didn't expect them to have a great accomplishment of invincible Vajra divine art. Among the Shaolin Temple, the Arhat court has the most research on invincible Vajra divine art. If there is a disciple who has cultivated invincible Vajra divine art to great accomplishment, it can only be a disciple of the Arhat court. Moreover, the bronze array is also in the Arhat court. That's why the warrior monastery head asked. As soon as the voice of the warrior monastery head fell, the other court heads and Abbot Huiwen also looked over. Namo Amitba. The Arhat court head immediately replied. This poor monk knows all the disciples of the Arhat court. No one can cultivate invincible Vajra divine art to great accomplishment. As soon as these words came out, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads looked stunned. If it is not a disciple of the Arhat court, then which disciple has cultivated invincible Vajra divine art to great accomplishment? After a moment, the disciplinary court head tentatively asked, is it related to what happened 5 years ago? 5 years ago, a golden Buddha appeared above the Great Strength Hall, and Buddha's aura filled the air, illuminating the entire Shaolin Temple. At that time, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads thought that the Buddha favored a disciple, which caused this vision. However, in the end they checked Buddha Shaolin Vajra court hall disciples at that time. No one had any anomalies. This matter has always been on Abbot Huiwen's mind, and even now, he is still secretly observing. Unfortunately, that is it, Abbot Huiwen sighed softly. Invincible Vajra divine art, specialized in the cultivation of the body. Once cultivated to great accomplishment, the control of the body would be terrifyingly strong. If the other party intended to hide his aura, it would be impossible to find him unless he attained Arhat. Let's not talk about this for now. Abbot Huiwen was silent for a moment, and then said in a low voice, the 100-year period is coming. Get ready. 100-year period. Hearing these words, the court heads' faces changed slightly. They looked at the forbidden area of the back mountain with solemn expressions. Almost. If we were a little slower, I'm afraid we would have been caught on the spot. Su Qin returned to the chores court and was slightly relieved. With Su Qin's strength after breaking through the 108 bronze men array, he was fully capable of stopping the bell from ringing. But at that time Su Qin was obsessed with the breakthrough and forgot to stop it. However, after the invincible Vajra divine art is completed, there will be such a change, Su Qin muttered to himself. At this moment Su Qin's aura was completely restrained, and he was no different from an ordinary person. Even if Abbot Huiwen personally checked, it would be impossible to find anything. But only Su Qin knew how terrifying the power he now possessed was. In the 108 bronze men array, Su Qin only released a little of his physical strength, and the 108 bronze men collapsed. If it was completely unleashed, how strong would the destructive power be? Su Qin was looking forward to it. Next, it's time to prepare for the breakthrough. Su Qin calmed down and made a decision in his heart. Since entering the 4th grade realm a year ago, Su Qin has been suppressing his cultivation and delaying the breakthrough time. It's not because Su Qin doesn't want to go further. It's because there is a great risk when entering the upper realm from the middle realm. This great risk has nothing to do with oneself, but comes from the outside world. If a martial artist wants to enter the upper realm and become a 3rd grade martial artist, the first thing to do is to completely open the channel between oneself and the outside world and be washed by the world's essence qi. Only in this way can one truly become a martial artist in the upper realm. However, how tyrannical is the world's essence qi? If it is allowed to enter the body unscrupulously, who can predict the damage it will cause? Many rank for martial artists would explode and die immediately when they broke through. Even if they survived, their meridians were broken and they became a waste. This is also the reason why there are so few upper realm martial artists in the world today. Generally speaking, out of 54th grade martial artists breaking through, it's considered lucky if one person succeeds in the end. Even in a great sect like the Shaolin Temple, breaking through to the upper realm is a top priority and requires the personal protection of the court heads and the abbot. Therefore, Su Qin is so cautious. When breaking through to the upper realm, the biggest risk is the world's essence qi from the outside world entering the body. If there is a slight mistake, the body will explode and die. The reason for this is nothing more than that the body is too weak. If the body is strong enough to ignore the world's essence qi, the so-called risk is naturally not worth mentioning. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, but now I have cultivated invincible Vajra divine art to the Dashi stage. With just my body I can challenge the upper realm. With such a body it shouldn't be a problem to withstand the world's essence qi. Su Qin guessed in his heart. Although Su Qin believes that the Dashi stage of invincible Vajra divine art is enough to cope with the risk of a breakthrough, but in order to be foolproof, he decided to wait a few more months. Using these few months, he will sign in more pills to strengthen the body, such as the marrow cleansing pill. Anyway, he has waited for a year, so a few more months won't make a difference. Next, Su Qin temporarily gave up the sign in outside the scripture pavilion and left all the sign in opportunities in the Bodhi court. During this period, Su Qin clearly felt that the Shaolin Temple seems to have begun to be on guard, and this atmosphere of vigilance is getting more and more intense. Even Su Qin, a sweeping monk with a very low sense of existence, noticed that something was wrong. While sweeping the floor, Su Qin vaguely heard some disciples whispering about the 100-year period and the Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Back Mountain Forbidden Area? Su Qin had a thoughtful look on his face. In the past 5 years, Su Qin has visited all corners of the Shaolin Temple. Only a few forbidden areas have not been to. Among them is the Back Mountain of the Shaolin Temple. In the first 4 years, Su Qin was weak and didn't dare to enter a forbidden area like the Back Mountain. After Su Qin entered the 4th grade, he could vaguely perceive that there was a more powerful aura in the Back Mountain. Because of this, Su Qin has never been close to the Back Mountain. No matter what happens, I'm just a sweeping monk, it has nothing to do with me. Su Qin thought for a while and didn't care too much. Chapter 6. When Su Qin returned to the chores yard, he found that the head of the chores yard was reprimanding someone. When the head of the chores yard saw Su Qin, he nodded slightly. The head of the chores yard had watched Su Qin grow up and knew that Su Qin had been diligent and hardworking in the past 5 years. Compared with Su Qin, the other disciples of the chores yard were not good enough. These disciples either wanted to learn the martial arts of the Shaolin Temple secretly, or were lazy secretly. Only Su Qin had never slacked off in the past 5 years. Every day, he would appear in different corners of the Shaolin Temple and sweep the floor. Where could he find such a worry-free disciple? The more the head of the chores yard looked at Su Qin, the more satisfied he was. He wondered if he should find an opportunity to entrust him with important tasks. Zheng Guan is back. The head of the chores yard smiled at Su Qin. Su Qin was a disciple of the Zhen generation. When he entered the Shaolin Temple, He was given the name Zhang Guan, head of the chores yard. Su Qin walked to the crowd of chores yard disciples and stopped. Well, during this time the Shaolin Temple is under martial law. You should all pay attention. The head of the chores yard turned his eyes to the other disciples and said seriously, "Head of the chores yard, what happened? I see that the disciples of the other yards are being mysterious." A disciple of the chores yard asked curiously. Hearing this, the other disciples' eyes lit up and their ears quickly pricked up. The head of the chores yard hesitated for a while and decided to say more. "This is related to the scandal of the Shaolin Temple. Listen carefully and don't spread it." In fact, this matter was not a secret. The head of the chores yard didn't say it before because he didn't want to distract the disciples. But now the Shaolin Temple was under martial law again because of this matter. If he didn't say anything, if these disciples got into trouble, he, the head of the chores yard, would have to clean up after them? 900 years ago, when the Shaolin Temple was at its peak, a traitor appeared. Although this traitor is a disciple of the Shaolin Temple, he betrayed the sutra and called himself Devil Buddha. He wants to destroy the Shaolin Temple. Fortunately, there was an ancestral master who had attained the realm of Arhat in the temple. When the ancestral master took action, the Devil Buddha was quickly suppressed. After suppressing the Devil Buddha, the founder passed away very quickly. At this point, the servant court head sighed softly. If the Shaolin Temple still had someone as powerful as Arhat, why would they be so cowardly now? The other disciples looked at each other when they heard this. At their level, they couldn't understand what Devil Buddha and Arhat meant. Only Su Qin had a serious look in his eyes. The warriors in the world were divided into 9 ranks. Rank 1 was the strongest and rank 9 was the weakest. Those who could enter rank 3 were the most famous warriors in the world. The heads of the Shaolin Temple were at this level. As for Abbot Huiwen, he is grade 2. In the whole world, a rank 2 warrior could be called a grandmaster of martial arts. As for rank 1, they were grandmasters of martial arts. Only a sect with a rank 1 warrior could be called a major martial arts sect in the world. Even in the Shaolin Temple, a rank 1 warrior was called a holy monk. Above rank 1 was the realm of Arhat. People in Jianghu preferred to call warriors of this realm legend of martial arts. Whether it was the realm of Arhat or legend of martial arts, they both represented the pinnacle of martial arts. They could ride the wind and control the qi, and destroy cities and destroy the earth with a flip of the hand. According to the servant court head, the ancestral master who attained the realm of Arhat passed away soon after suppressing the Devil Buddha. Suppressing, not killing. It was very likely that the Devil Buddha was also a powerful warrior at the level of Arhat. Therefore, the ancestral master could only suppress, because it was impossible to kill. Moreover, during the suppression, the ancestral master should have been seriously injured, which led to his quick death. Besides that, Su Qin also knew that the most powerful divine skill of the Shaolin Temple, the Buddha's palm, which was claimed to have been personally taught by Buddha, was lost 900 years ago. It was at the same time as the birth of the Devil Buddha. Su Qin guessed that it was because of the chaos of the Devil Buddha that the Buddha's palm was lost, and the ancestral master who attained the realm of Arhat passed away. Just as Su Qin was thinking, the servant court head continued. Although the Devil Buddha was suppressed, his demonic thoughts did not die. Every 100 years, he would break through the seal and split out a strand of demonic thoughts to bewitch the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. In the past 900 years, because of the bewitchment of the demonic thoughts, a total of 8 successors of the Devil Buddha appeared in the Shaolin Temple. These successors of the Devil Buddha were all disciples of the Shaolin Temple, but they were influenced by the demonic thoughts and wanted to destroy the Shaolin Temple. And in a few years it will be the 900 years. Therefore, if you are bewitched by the demonic thoughts, you must inform me in time. Do you understand? The servant court head looked at the disciples sternly when he said this. Yes, court head. The disciples of the servant court immediately replied. After the servant court head left, Su Qin did what he should do. The Devil Buddha was a matter for the court heads and the abbot of the Shaolin Temple. It had nothing to do with Su Qin. The sweeping monk was too inconspicuous. Unless the Shaolin Temple was destroyed, no matter how big the matter was, it would not affect Su Qin. Half a year passed just like that. In the past 6 months, Su Qin only signed in at the Bodhi court and received a large number of pills. The preparations are almost done. Su Qin casually found a mountain forest and prepared to break through. This mountain forest was at the edge of the Shaolin Temple. Often no one would come here for several years. Su Qin's breakthrough would not alarm the abbot of the Shaolin Temple even if he caused some commotion. Walala! Su Qin raised his right hand and immediately took out the pills from the system space. These pills were placed in front of Su Qin. They were all pills to strengthen the body, such as the marrow cleansing pill. At a glance there were about 1,000 of them. If the court heads of the Shaolin Temple saw these pills, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Even the entire Bodhi court produced more than 100 marrow cleansing pills a year. These marrow cleansing pills were distributed to each court head and each court head could only get 10 pills a year. But now there were thousands of marrow cleansing pills in front of Su Qin. It was equivalent to 10 years of production of the Bodhi court without eating or drinking. Start! Su Qin sat cross-legged and kept eating the marrow cleansing pills as if he was eating beans. Half an hour later, Su Qin's aura suddenly shrank. Then the endless heaven and earth essence qi rushed madly into Su Qin's body, as if a gate had been opened. However, the heaven and earth essence qi, which was enough to make an ordinary 4th-grade martial artist explode on the spot, poured into Su Qin's body like a well-behaved cat and quickly integrated into every piece of flesh and blood, crazily strengthening his body. 2 hours passed. Su Qin opened his eyes and was slightly surprised. That's it. I'm already a 3rd-grade martial artist? Su Qin was surprised. The process of him entering the 3rd grade was as simple as eating and drinking. It was not as dangerous as the rumors said. Chapter 7. The biggest difference between upper realm and middle realm martial artists is their internal strength. The upper realm martial artist's body is washed by the world's essence qi, and their internal strength transforms. Under normal circumstances, an upper realm martial artist's internal strength can crush a middle realm martial artist's internal strength. Simply put, even if it's just an upper realm martial artist, they can easily sweep a middle realm martial artist. In addition to internal strength, the upper realm martial artist's body also gets a certain degree of improvement. Of course, the improvement here is far less than the great accomplishment of Invincible Vajra Divine Art. This is a grade 3 martial artist? Su Qin whispered to himself, looking excited. Su Qin can clearly feel that at this moment, he is faintly drawing the world's essence qi around him. Su Qin punched out, but what broke out was not his own strength, but the mighty world's essence qi. No wonder in the Shaolin Temple, only grade 3 martial artists can become the court head. Su Qin thought, feeling the internal strength in his body. The gap between grade 3 and grade 4 is too big. Su Qin was amazed. Because the power controlled by grade 3 martial artists is no longer their own, but the world's essence qi. Thinking of this, Su Qin finally realized the horror of the great accomplishment of Invincible Vajra Divine Art. Invincible Vajra Divine Art has nothing to do with the world's essence qi. It is purely an external technique to temper the body. But to be able to strengthen the body to the point of challenging an upper realm martial artist is tantamount to fighting against the world with one's own strength. It is simply incredible. It's time to go back. Su Qin quickly converged his aura. With the great accomplishment of Invincible Vajra Divine Art, as long as he doesn't actively expose his aura, even a grade 1 great grandmaster won't be able to detect any abnormalities. Whoosh! Su Qin's figure turned into a shadow and disappeared in a flash. If any Shaolin Temple disciple passes by here and sees this, they will be stunned, thinking that they have seen a ghost. The Shaolin Temple was simple, tranquil, and otherworldly. Just as Su Qin was about to return to the chore's yard, he saw a figure staring blankly at the back of the mountain. True nature. Su Qin recognized this genius from the Arhat Academy, who had entered the Shaolin Temple at the same time as him. Why do I feel that he is a bit strange? Su Qin felt that Zhan Xing had a sense of loss, as if he had received a blow. When Zhan Xing saw Su Qin approaching, he immediately left. What happened? Su Qin muttered to himself. Su Qin thought so, but he had no intention of asking. He was not familiar with Zhan Xing. Although both of them belonged to the Zhan generation and had entered the Shaolin Temple at the same time, they had hardly interacted with each other. As far as Zhanxing was concerned, he was a genius of the Arhat Academy and had a bright future ahead of him. But what about Su Qin? He was just a sweeping monk. Although the Shaolin Temple sought to see through the world of mortals, Zhanxing obviously had not reached this level. After returning to the chores yard, Su Qin heard the chores yard disciples whispering among themselves. I heard that Zhanxing of the Arhat Academy and his whole family were slaughtered by a passing evil warrior. I heard about it too. It is said that the abbot even called him over to comfort him. Comfort? His whole family is dead. What's the use of comforting him? Ah, so pitiful. I see. Su Qin thought of Zhanxing's expression and understood. The outside world is too dangerous. The Shaolin Temple is still the best. Su Qin was filled with emotion and became more determined to stay in the Shaolin Temple. Time passed. Next, Su Qin resumed sweeping the floor and signing in. Every day, he would go to the scripture pavilion, the Bodhi court, and the demon-subduing tower. During this period, as Su Qin's strength improved greatly and entered the upper realm, he began to try the forbidden areas of the Shaolin Temple that he had never been to before. 4.5 years passed in a blink of an eye. Outside the scripture pavilion, Su Qin held a broom with both hands and leisurely swept the falling leaves. In the past 4.5 years, Su Qin obtained countless heaven and earth treasures and spirit pills through signing in. His strength has advanced by leaps and bounds, and he has stepped into the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster realm. Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. In today's martial world, a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is definitely a peak martial artist. If a legend does not appear, a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is the strongest. In the world, there are only a few Grade 1 Great Grandmasters, such as the imperial teacher of the Mengyuan Empire in the north, Daoist Zhang of Wudong true martial lineage. Although the Shaolin Temple is a great sect in this generation, there is no Grade 1A holy monk. If it were not for the deep heritage of the Shaolin Temple, they would have long been removed from the list of great sects. From this, it can be seen how rare a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is. Any one of them can affect the situation and suppress one side. It's been 10 years. Su Qin's figure was tall and straight. His eyes were calm. It has been 10 years since he entered the Shaolin Temple. In the past 10 years, he went from an ordinary person who was not even Grade 9 to a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Moreover, he is vaguely the strongest person in this generation of the Shaolin Temple. One must know that even the current Shaolin Temple's Abbot Huiwen is only Grade 2. As for the other court heads, they are only Grade 3. They can't be compared to a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster like Su Qin. Su Qin is confident that with his current strength, even if Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads were added together, they would not be able to defeat him. In the past 10 years there have been many new faces and many geniuses. Su Qin sighed softly. The Shaolin Temple recruits a large number of disciples every year to maintain the inheritance. In the past 10 years Su Qin has seen too much. But no matter what happens, Su Qin is still unswerving as a sweeping monk. His original intention has not changed and has never wavered. Even if the handyman court head wanted to promote him, Su Qin resolutely refused. Su Qin has long thought about it. In the entire Shaolin Temple, only the sweeping monks can freely enter and leave most places. Otherwise, if Su Qin is a disciple of the Arhat court, but runs to other places all day, wouldn't it arouse suspicion? Besides, whether it is the Arhat court or the warrior monastery, the disciples will receive the attention of the court head and even the abbot. Su Qin has too many secrets. If something is discovered, how can he explain it? Only the sweeping monk can perfectly cover up all of Su Qin's secrets. Even the abbot of the Shaolin Temple will not care too much about a sweeping monk in the temple. Just as Su Qin was quietly sweeping the floor outside the scripture pavilion, suddenly, a violent shout resounded from the Dharma court. "Evil beast, you dare?" The next moment, Wang! Extremely rich demonic energy began to spread wildly, quickly enveloping half of the Shaolin Temple. The demonic power was vast. Ha 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 ha. Old man Huiwen, you are old, your vitality is declining. How does my devil Buddha's palm taste? Chapter 8. Outside the Dharma court. Abbot Huiwen's face was pale. A black palm print could be faintly seen on his lower abdomen. This palm print seemed to have penetrated deep into Abbot Huiwen's bone marrow. Strands of devil qi lingered like maggots in tarsal bones. Behind Abbot Huiwen, the court heads were staring at the young man with black eyes. Zhenxing, how could you? The Arhat court head's face was full of anger. The young man in front of him was the genius disciple of the Arhat court, Zhenxing. Just an hour ago, Zhenxing informed Abbot Huiwen and the court heads that he knew about the Devil Buddha. But at the critical moment, he sneakily attacked Abbot Huiwen and succeeded. Stop talking. At this moment, Abbot Huiwen took a deep breath and barely suppressed his injuries. He looked at Zhenxing. Zhenxing, you are this generation's successor of the Devil Buddha, right? 900 years ago, a certain patriarch of the Shaolin Temple who attained the Arhat Buddhahood had suppressed the Devil Buddha in the back mountain. Since then, every 100 years, a devil would break free from the seal and bewitch the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. Any disciple of the Shaolin Temple who was bewitched would consider themselves as the successor of the Devil Buddha. Their strength would be strengthened by the devil will, and they could climb to rank 2 or even rank 1 in a short time. In addition, every successor of the Devil Buddha would hate the Shaolin Temple and would aim to destroy the Shaolin Temple. In the past 900 years, the Shaolin Temple had produced 8 successors of the Devil Buddha, and Zhenxing was the 9th. In order to get rid of the first 8 successors of the Devil Buddha, the Shaolin Temple paid a heavy price. Especially in the last 100 years, the remaining 4 holy monks of the Shaolin Temple did not hesitate to use forbidden arts to kill the successor of the Devil Buddha. As a result, the 4 holy monks passed away one after another. 60 years ago, the last holy monk passed away, and the Shaolin Temple no longer had a holy monk. Ha ha ha. Yes, I'm the successor of the Devil Buddha. Zhenxing did not bother to deny it, and openly admitted his identity. The successor of the Devil Buddha. Even if they had already guessed it, the court heads' expressions, when they heard these 4 words. For the Shaolin Temple, the successor of the Devil Buddha was more like a curse. Once every 100 years it would drag down the Shaolin Temple. Otherwise, with the heritage of the Shaolin Temple as one of the major martial arts sects in the world, they would not be unable to cultivate even one holy monk in this generation. Zhenxing, how dare you do this? The Shaolin Temple has been good to you, accepting you as a disciple and teaching you divine arts. You! The court head of the Arhat court stared at Zhenxing, and his eyes seemed to spit fire. Zhenxing had been in the Shaolin Temple for 10 years, and the court head of the Arhat court had really trained him as a nephew. He even prepared to let Zhenxing take over the position of the court head of the Arhat court in the future. But he never dreamed that Zhenxing dared to do such a disgraceful thing. Not bad. Zhenxing heard this, and his face was full of sarcasm. My family of 18 was slaughtered, and what is the Shaolin Temple doing? Senior brother comforted me, the court head comforted me, and the abbot comforted me. But you know what I want is not comfort at all. Every time Zhenxing said a word, the surrounding devil qi soared. As a major martial arts sect in the world, the Shaolin Temple claims to be righteous, and only knows how to comfort people. Zhenxing's words were full of killing intent. Hypocrites, hypocrites, Shaolin Temple should be destroyed. As soon as Zhenxing's voice fell, the devil qi began to shake wildly. Vaguely, a half-gold and half-black Devil Buddha's golden body appeared behind Zhenxing Comfort. The court head of the warrior monastery was furious. Then do you know that in order to avenge you, senior brother did not hesitate to violate the precepts, went down the mountain without permission, and hunted down the murderer for 3 months, and killed him in the vast sea in the west? Okay, no need to say more. The court head of the Arhat court calmed down and looked at Zhenxing. The successor of the Devil Buddha is a great enemy of the Shaolin Temple. Since you are the successor of the Devil Buddha, this poor monk will personally clean up the sect. The court head of the Arhat court head's skin faintly turned golden. As one of the most knowledgeable people in the Shaolin Temple on the Vajra unbreakable divine art, the court head of the Arhat court head was much stronger than the other court heads, even though he was still some distance away from mastering the Vajra unbreakable divine art. Coupled with the vigorous internal force of a third-grade martial artist, from a certain point of view, the court head of the Arhat court head's strength could at least be ranked in the top 3 among the court heads. The murderer was killed? Zhenxing was slightly stunned. Then, a strong black light appeared in the depths of his pupils again. So what, can my family of 18 live? Boom! The devil chi was monstrous. The court heads took action at the first moment, faintly forming a large array. Abbot Huiwen sat cross-legged, suppressing the black palm print on his lower abdomen. However, a moment later, crack, the court heads suddenly retreated. Their faces were as pale as paper, and they spat out blood on the spot. It's useless. I'm already a second-grade martial artist. You're too weak. Zhanxing smiled contemptuously. Huiwen, are you still not going to take action? Zhanxing's eyes turned, looking at Abbot Huiwen, and said mockingly, the power of the Devil Buddha is not so easy to recover. Besides, even if you recover, what can you do? You're a second-grade martial artist, and I'm also a second-grade martial artist. The power of the Devil Buddha naturally restrains Buddhist techniques. Even if you recover to your peak, you're still not my opponent. Zhanxing's killing intent was boiling. If your Shaolin temple has a holy monk, I'll turn around and leave without saying a word. Unfortunately, your Shaolin temple doesn't have a holy monk. Since you don't have one, go to hell. As soon as Zhanxing finished his words, the light suddenly became dim, like a ghost shrouding Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. Endless black fog surged in from all directions. Within this black fog, there was a strange power. It was as if someone was whispering, and even their consciousness could invade it. For a moment, except for Abbot Huiwen who could barely stay awake, the other court heads began to slowly sink. Abbot Huiwen's face was as pale as paper, and a faint golden light emerged from his body. He was the only one on the field who was holding on. But even so, Abbot Huiwen also felt that his strength was declining at a speed visible to the naked eye, and he would be completely defeated in a quarter of an hour at most. Once he couldn't hold on, the whole Shaolin temple would probably be destroyed. Is the Shaolin temple, which has been passed down for thousands of years, really going to be destroyed at this time? Abbot Huiwen's face was full of grief and despair. The Shaolin temple was a major martial arts sect in the world that had arhat. It had been passed down for thousands of years and had gone through countless storms. How could it be destroyed at this time? Abbot Huiwen was full of reluctance. Just as Abbot Huiwen was ready to detonate everything he had, even if he couldn't die together with his opponent, he was going to severely injure the successor of the Devil Buddha. Outside the sutra depository, leaves kept falling. Su Qin stopped sweeping the floor, raised his right hand, and gently pinched a falling leaf. Humans are not plants. Chapter 9. In the Dharma Court, black devil chi covered the sky and the earth, crazily shrouding in all directions. All the Shaolin Temple disciples who were affected by the devil chi were confused and quickly fell into depravity. In the depths of the thick black devil chi, a faint Buddha's light burned slowly like a candle flame. The Buddha's light was misty, trying to resist the black devil chi. But it was obvious that this Buddha's light could not last long. Once the Buddha's light was extinguished, the Shaolin Temple would become a demonic realm in the human world. Huiwen, you old fool, give up. You will never know how terrifying the power of the Devil Buddha is. Zhanxing said slowly. Now that the Shaolin Temple's heads had lost their ability to resist, and Abbot Huiwen could not hold on for long, Zhanxing was already confident of victory. Fortunately, I led the heads and the abbot to the Dharma court. Otherwise, once someone left, it would not be so easy to destroy the Shaolin Temple with the resources of the Shaolin Temple. Zhanxing's face flashed with a hint of pride. As a major martial arts sect in the world, the Shaolin Temple had enough resources to stop him even without a holy monk. However, no matter how strong the resources were, someone had to use them. But now, all the people who could use the resources of the Shaolin Temple had been wiped out by him. Just as Zhanxing was about to make a move and completely eliminate Abbot Huiwen, he seemed to feel something, and his face suddenly changed. This is... Zhanxing suddenly looked up and looked in the direction of the Sutra Pavilion. In Zhanxing's senses, an aura of the purest yang was like a sharp sword, easily breaking the mighty black devil chi. The endless black devil chi was condensed by the power of the Devil Buddha. Although it was illusory, even a level 2 martial artist could be trapped in it if they were not careful. But in front of this purest yang aura, the black devil chi was like a thin paper, breaking at the touch. The next moment, this aura crossed thousands of meters and arrived in front of Zhanxing in an instant. Not good. Zhanxing's scalp exploded. and he was about to retreat. But it was too late. The pure and positive power directly penetrated Zhanxing's forehead and landed on the 1,000-year ancient clock behind him, along with a swoosh. Clang! The magnificent chime of the bell resounded. Zhanxing's eyes were blank, and his body exploded. Without the source of the devil qi, the vast devil qi that enveloped half of the Shaolin Temple dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Abbot Huiwen, who was about to self-destruct in an attempt to severely injure Zhanxing, was stunned. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the true nature would self-destruct in front of him. Something's not right. It's not self-detonation. Someone did it. Abbot Huiwen was indeed a veteran rank 2 martial artist. He immediately realized something. At this moment, Wang, faint devil qi condensed and formed a new true nature beside it. I died? Zhanxing broke out in cold sweat. If it wasn't for the death substitution technique from the Devil Buddha's inheritance, he would have been dead by now. But even so, Zhanxing wasn't lucky at all. The death substitution technique was a forbidden technique, and every Devil Buddha's successor could only use it once in their lifetime. It was equivalent to having a second life. Zhanxing's face was pale as he looked at the ancient clock not far away. He saw a withered yellow leaf piercing through the ancient clock. A leaf? I actually died on a fallen leaf. Zhanxing's heart was in turmoil. If he had died on some divine weapon, he could accept it. But a leaf? What kind of existence could actually kill him with an ordinary leaf that couldn't be any more ordinary? Zhanxing couldn't imagine. Also, Zhanxing touched his forehead. Even if he survived with the death substitution technique, he could still feel a pure and positive aura between his eyebrows that was constantly melting away the devil qi in his body. Under the suppression of this pure and positive aura, Zhanxing's strength was less than 10%. He might not even be able to defeat the head of the rank 3 courtyard. The Shaolin Temple is indeed unfathomable. Zhanxing glanced at Abbot Huiwen, who was equally shocked, and knew that he should leave. If he didn't leave now, not only would he not be able to destroy the Shaolin Temple, but he would also die here. Thinking of this, Zhanxing turned into a devil shadow and fled without hesitation. Abbot Huiwen couldn't do anything when he saw this. Zhanxing's strength had been greatly damaged, but so had he. After being ambushed by Zhanxing and invaded by devil qi, Abbot Huiwen's injuries were much more serious than Zhanxing's. Outside the Shaolin Temple, a devil shadow was running frantically. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Zhanxing was mad with hatred. Devil Buddha's successors could enter rank 2 or even rank 1 in a short time under the strengthening of their devil will. But every Devil Buddha's successor's mind is completely distorted, and their lifelong goal is to destroy the Shaolin Temple. Moreover, the lifespan of the Devil Buddha's successors is very short, and they will die of old age in at most 5 years. The person who attacked me just now is at least a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. And he is an extremely powerful Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Isn't there a holy monk in the Shaolin Temple? Zhanxing took a deep breath and looked back at the Shaolin Temple. That Grade 1 Great Grandmaster shouldn't have chased after me, right? However, just as Zhanxing heaved a sigh of relief, a calm voice rang out unhurriedly. Are you looking for me? Boom! Zhanxing's hair stood on end, and he instantly looked at the source of the voice. He saw a man in a gray robe looking at him. You are? Zhanxing only felt that Su Qin was somewhat familiar. Before Zhanxing became a devil, although he was a genius of the Arhat court, and he also entered the Shaolin Temple at the same time as Su Qin. But Su Qin was just a sweeping monk, and he usually didn't even look at him. It's you. Zhanxing's thoughts turned quickly, and he finally remembered who Su Qin was. In any case, Su Qin was a disciple of the same Zhan generation as him. When they entered the Shaolin Temple together, Zhanxing had a few words with Su Qin. However, after Su Qin was assigned to the handyman court and became a sweeping monk, Zhanxing never contacted Su Qin again. In Zhanxing's view, he and Su Qin were destined to be two kinds of people. Whether it is now or in the future, it is impossible for them to walk together. Even now, Zhanxing has become the successor of the Devil Buddha, and he doesn't put Su Qin in his eyes at all. When did you get here? The more Zhanxing looked at Su Qin, the more frightened he was. Although Su Qin's expression was like an ordinary person in front of him, and there was no fluctuation of internal force, the more it was like this, the more Zhan Xing felt that something was wrong. Who is he? The successor of the Devil Buddha. Even if he was now seriously injured, the aura he casually exuded was enough to make ordinary martial artists tremble, let alone an ordinary person like Qin. If Su Qin was really an ordinary person, his legs should be weak at this moment, right? Just as Zhan Xing was in a state of shock, Su Qin looked calm, and said something that made Zhan Xing's expression change. After taking a blow from me, you didn't die. The Devil Buddha is really not simple. Boom! Zhan Xing's expression froze, and his body retreated hundreds of meters, as if he was facing a great enemy, as if he was facing a life-and-death crisis. Chapter 10. Who am I? Su Qin looked at Zhan Xing and said casually, I am Zheng Guan from the handyman court. Didn't you recognize me? Impossible. Zhan Xing stared at Su Qin vigilantly. Zheng Guan is just a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple. His strength is low, but you, Zhan Xing really wanted to ask, what did Su Qin mean by that sentence? But a strong sense of crisis crazily urged him to ask. Run! Run! Otherwise you will die. Zhan Xing knew that this was a warning from the demonic will in his mind. Just now did you do it? Zhan Xing calmed down and couldn't help but ask. If you are referring to the leaf, it was indeed me. Su Qin admitted frankly. When these words came out, Zhan Xing's face was full of disbelief. You must know that someone who can kill him with a leaf is at least a grade 1 great grandmaster. And what is the concept of a grade 1 great grandmaster? Looking at the whole world, there are only a few, and all of them are peerless powerhouses. The Shaolin Temple as a great sect has an unfathomable foundation. If there is really a grade 1 great grandmaster in secret, although Zhan Xing is angry, he can accept it. But Su Qin, why is Su Qin a grade 1 great grandmaster? How old is he? How can he be a grade 1 great grandmaster? Zhan Xing knew that if there was no inheritance of the Devil Buddha and no demonic will to transform his body, he would be grade 7 at most. And this is based on the continuous supply of resources from the Shaolin Temple. But now, someone told him that a person about his age is already a grade 1 great grandmaster? What's more, this person was an unsightly sweeping monk. How could Zhan Xing accept the disparity between them? Impossible. Impossible. Zhan Xing muttered to himself. The demonic qi in his body was surging, and there was a tendency for it to riot. The descendant of the Devil Buddha was a quick product. It was completely transformed by the demonic will, and its control of its own power was extremely rough. At this moment, after being stimulated by the outside world, it began to backfire. Sigh. If you sneak out of the Shaolin Temple, I won't care. Be it the Devil Buddha or Gautama Buddha, what does it have to do with a sweeping monk like me? Su Qin sighed softly, and his tone gradually lowered. But why do you want to destroy the Shaolin Temple? If the Shaolin Temple is destroyed, where am I supposed to sweep? Su Qin's face was full of impatience. How could Su Qin be willing to leave when he finally found such a precious place like the Shaolin Temple? Sweep the floor? Zhan Xing was dumbfounded and did not react for a long time. Just now he had thought of many things. He even wondered if Su Qin was a peerless genius secretly cultivated by the Shaolin Temple. Because they were afraid of arousing the jealousy of the outside world, they deliberately put him in the chores yard to be a sweeping monk. Although this still does not explain why Su Qin is already a grade 1 great grandmaster at such a young age. But at least this will make Zhan Xing feel a little better. But now, listening to Su Qin's words, it seems that he is really a sweeping monk? The reason why he attacked was because he wanted to destroy the Shaolin Temple. Why would he destroy the place where he sweeps? Zhan Xing felt a sweet taste in his throat and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. You dare to humiliate me like this? Zhan Xing's eyes were blood red, and endless demonic energy emerged again, covering all directions. The black demon qi was so dense that it was like an inescapable net, tightly imprisoning Su Qin. I don't believe it. I don't believe that you are a grade 1 great grandmaster. Behind Zhan Xing, a half-black and half-gold Devil Buddha golden body faintly appeared. Zhan Xing knew that if Su Qin was really the grade 1 great grandmaster who attacked him in the Shaolin Temple just now, even if he ran to the ends of the earth, he would still die. But if Su Qin was not the grade 1 great grandmaster, then under his angry attack, he would definitely not be spared. Boom! The terrifying demonic energy rushed towards him. In any case, you were once a disciple of the Arhat Hall. In that case, you must remember the Arhat Hall's Arhat Fist. Su Qin raised his right hand casually, his aura surged, and he danced according to the Arhat Fist. Arhat Fist? Zhanxing only felt that he had heard a big joke. Arhat Fist is the most basic martial art of the Arhat Hall. Even a novice monk who has just entered the hall can perform it. But now Su Qin gave up using the many divine arts of the Shaolin Temple, and instead used this basic martial art to deal with him? Ha 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 ha. You are courting death. Zhanxing's eyes burst with black light, and his demonic power continued to soar. However, the next moment, Su Qin lightly punched towards Zhanxing. No one can describe the terror of this punch. This punch was like a real Arhat, descending, destroying the mighty demonic energy and finally landing on Zhanxing's chest. Crack. Zhanxing's eyes quickly dimmed, and the black light disappeared. It turns out that this is the real Arhat Fist. Zhanxing's voice was getting lower and lower, and finally he knelt on the ground. Wang. A wisp of dark black smoke emerged from Zhanxing's body, exposed to the sun, and quickly dissipated. This is the demonic will? Su Qin waited until the demonic will completely evaporated before he turned and left. A few hours later, Shaolin Temple. With the departure of the Devil Buddha's descendant, the demonic energy dissipated, and the court heads slowly woke up. The court heads were originally grade 3, so they naturally recovered very quickly. Abbot, what happened to that evil disciple? The Arhat court head's face was pale, and he forcibly suppressed his anger and asked. When these words came out, everyone's spirit was suddenly lifted. For 900 years, the descendants of the Devil Buddha had been ruthless and insidious, and all of them aimed to destroy the Shaolin Temple. But today the abbot was seriously injured, and the court heads had fallen, but the Shaolin Temple was safe and sound, which made the court heads very curious. Just now, a master of our Shaolin Temple made a move and scared off the descendant of the Devil Buddha with a fallen leaf. Abbot Huiwen looked at the court heads and slowly said, "A master? A fallen leaf scared off the descendant of the Devil Buddha? How is that possible? The descendant of the Devil Buddha has reached grade 2. How could he be scared off by a fallen leaf?" The court heads were shocked and couldn't believe it. Abbot Huiwen led the court heads to the 1,000-year-old ancient bell outside the Dharma court, and pointed to one of the fallen leaves that ran through the ancient bell. This is the truth. It's really a fallen leaf. Even from so far away, I can feel the aura of the fallen leaf. A holy monk, only a grade 1 a holy monk can do this with a fallen leaf, right? The court heads were overjoyed. Don't be happy too early. Abbot Huiwen shook his head slightly. The descendant of the Devil Buddha has escaped. According to the experience of the descendants of the Devil Buddha, any descendant of the Devil Buddha will enter grade 2 or even grade 1 in a few years. Although the descendant of the Devil Buddha was forced to retreat now, when the other party comes to the Shaolin Temple again in the future, I am afraid that he will be a true grade 1 great grandmaster. Abbot Huiwen's words calmed the court heads down. Yes, so what if the Shaolin Temple has a grade 1a holy monk? It's not like they don't know the potential of the descendant of the Devil Buddha. When the descendant of the Devil Buddha comes, it is unknown whether the Shaolin Temple can stop him. Just as Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were discussing how to deal with the future descendant of the Devil Buddha, a disciple of the Shaolin Temple hurried over. Abbot, court heads. The Shaolin Temple disciple quickly said. Outside the Shaolin Temple, junior brother Zhenxing's body was found. What did you say? The descendant of the Devil Buddha is dead. Chapter 11. Soon, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads came to the Shaolin Temple, wanting to personally confirm whether the descendant of the Devil Buddha was really dead. It's not that Abbot Huiwen didn't believe in his disciple, but this matter was too unbelievable. The descendant of the Devil Buddha had many means and even mastered the legendary death substitution technique. Even the ancestor of the Shaolin Temple, who was suspected to be a grade 1 great grandmaster, was not able to kill the descendant of the Devil Buddha immediately. In this case, how could he possibly die? Just when Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were in doubt, they arrived outside the Shaolin Temple and saw Zhang Xing kneeling on the ground. Is it really that evil disciple? The Arhat court head was stunned. With the eyesight of the Arhat court head, he naturally saw that although Zhang Xing was kneeling there at this moment and seemed to have no injuries, in fact, his aura was completely cut off. He couldn't be more dead. Is he really dead? Abbot Huiwen finally breathed a sigh of relief, only to feel a mountain pressing down on his shoulders. If the descendant of the Devil Buddha didn't die sooner or later, he would make a comeback. But now, since the other party is dead, the crisis of the Shaolin Temple is naturally solved. At least for the next 100 years, the Shaolin Temple can develop in peace, and there is no need to worry about the so-called descendant of the Devil Buddha. Such a strong fist and tint. The pupils of the warrior monastery's head shrank sharply, feeling the aura of the descendant of the Devil Buddha, and his expression became aghast. As a martial artist in the upper realm, the warrior monastery head certainly saw the cause of death of the descendant of the Devil Buddha. One punch is fatal. What a terrifying fist technique! The disciplinary court head felt it carefully and couldn't help but exclaim. The fatal wound of the descendant of the Devil Buddha was the faint fist mark on his chest. This fist mark, with an extremely overbearing posture, destroyed the essence, energy, spirit, and internal organs of the descendant of the Devil Buddha without any suspense. This is the fist of Arhat? The head of the Arhat Academy seemed to have discovered something and looked aghast. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the successor of the Devil Buddha would die at the hands of one of the most basic fist techniques of the Arhat courtyard. What? Fist of Arhat? The faces of the other court heads changed. It really is the fist of Arhat. Abbot Huiwen sighed softly and continued. It seems that it was indeed the work of a holy monk from our temple. Abbot Huiwen had this speculation when he first heard the news of the death of the successor of the Devil Buddha. However, he wasn't sure at that time. Because in Abbot Huiwen's view, even if the Shaolin Temple really had a holy monk-level ancestor alive, he must have been close to Shouyuan and his qi and blood were declining. Repelling the successor of the Devil Buddha was already the limit. Otherwise, why didn't a holy monk kill the successor of the Devil Buddha at the first moment, but instead at the last moment? But now Abbot Huiwen couldn't figure it out. Abbot Huiwen knew all the disciples of the same generation, and it was impossible for anyone to step into first grade. As for the ancestors, the range was very wide. Even as the abbot of the Shaolin Temple, Huiwen couldn't figure it out at the moment. Ancestors? Yes, it must be a holy monk. Otherwise, who could kill the successor of the Devil Buddha? Buddha's blessing. I didn't expect a holy monk to be in charge of the Shaolin Temple. The court heads looked excited as they discussed in low voices. At this moment, the Shaolin Temple not only came out of the shadow of the successor of the Devil Buddha, but also had a holy monk. How could the court heads not be overjoyed? If these excited court heads knew that in their eyes, the mysterious ancestor who killed the successor of the Devil Buddha and solved the problem of the Shaolin Temple was just a humble sweeping monk in the chores yard, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out. Just when the successor of the Devil Buddha died, and the devil spirit dissipated, far away in the back mountain of the Shaolin Temple, an extremely dark devil shadow suddenly opened his eyes. Interesting. The demonic will dissipate it so quickly this time? It shouldn't be. For 900 years, the foundation of the Shaolin Temple has been declining day by day, and this generation doesn't even have a first grade. The devil shadow muttered to himself. Or did some other accident happen? As the devil shadow said, he got up and wanted to leave this place. However, the next moment, layers of golden seals full of strong pressure shrouded the devil shadow in an instant. Where the golden seals touched the devil shadow, a large amount of black devil chi evaporated and disappeared quickly. Damn it! This seal again. It's been 900 years, how long are you going to suppress me? The devil shadow was burning with anger, but he slowly returned to his original place. Soon, I can feel that the power of the seal is declining. When it's weaker, I can break the seal. At that time, I will make the Shaolin Temple a river of blood. As soon as the devil shadow finished his words, his figure merged into the void and disappeared completely. After the matter of the successor of the Devil Buddha, many disciples of the Shaolin Temple obviously felt a sense of urgency. Even the court heads began to try to go further and enter the second grade. Of course, this did not include Su Qin. Su Qin was still sweeping slowly every day, as if everything that happened outside had nothing to do with him. On this day, the handyman court head called Su Qin over. 10 years had passed, and the handyman court head was much older, with many wrinkles on his face. On the path of martial arts, even a first-grade martial artist could not stay young forever. At most, he could only slow down the speed of aging. Zhengguan, how long have you been in the Shaolin Temple? The handyman court head put down what he was busy with and suddenly asked. How long? Su Qin paused and continued, 10 years. Yes, 10 years. The handyman court head was full of emotion. 10 years ago, I shaved your head and led you to the handyman court. 10 years have passed in a flash. Su Qin listened to the handyman court head's words and did not say anything. You have been a sweeping monk for 10 years. Do you have any resentment in your heart? The handyman court head asked. Resentment? Su Qin was slightly stunned. He could not wait to be happy. How could he have any resentment? Never. Su Qin said truthfully. Not arrogant, not impatient, not frightened by favor or disgrace. The handyman court head stared at Su Qin for a while, and finally a trace of ridicule appeared on his face. I didn't expect that among the disciples of this generation of Shaolin Temple, the one with the highest state of mind is a sweeping monk. In fact, if Su Qin was an old man in his 50s or 60s, the handyman court head would not find it strange that he could do this. But Su Qin was not. From 10 to 20 years old, the most precious 10 years of one's life were spent on sweeping the floor and doing nothing. How could anyone not be a little unwilling? What's more, in the Shaolin Temple, a great martial arts sect in the world where divine skills and unique skills were close at hand, he could only sweep the floor. This kind of gap was enough to drive people crazy. But Su Qin did not. At least the handyman court head could not see any dissatisfaction in Su Qin. Just based on this point, Su Qin was enough to surpass the so-called geniuses of Arhat Monastery and Warrior Monastery. Even some of the court heads were not as good as Su Qin in terms of state of mind. The court head must be mistaken. I'm just a sweeping monk. I don't understand the state of mind. Chapter 12. Next, Su Qin said a few more words to the court head and then left. Before leaving, Su Qin intentionally or unintentionally reminded the court head if there was anything he wanted to do recently. Because Su Qin had already seen that the court head should be approaching the end of Shouyuan's life. In the martial Tao, the Shouyuan of a martial artist is certainly longer than an ordinary person, but as long as one has not become a legend and has not achieved Arhat Buddhahood, even a grade 1 great grandmaster can only live for 200 years at most. And this 200 years is the longest period. In fact, many grade 1 great grandmasters live far less than 200 years. Because any martial artist will more or less have some residual injuries on their body, which imperceptibly shortens Shouyuan's life. Things are still the same, but people have changed. Su Qin slowly walked on the shady path of the Shaolin Temple, his heart filled with emotion. The court head can be said to be his guide. At that time, if it were not for the court head, Su Qin would not even have been able to enter the Shaolin Temple. But now, 10 years later, the court head is about to pass away. It is said that as long as one achieves Arhat Buddhahood or steps into the legend realm, one will be young forever, and one's body will be restored to its peak, and one will live for more than 500 years. Su Qin suddenly thought of some records in the ancient books. This point has to be praised for the Shaolin Temple. As a great sect, a lot of top-secret information in Jianghu can be seen in the Shaolin Temple, especially information about the level of Arhat. Buddhism's Arhat is equivalent to a legend in Jianghu. Any word about a martial arts legend was top secret among top secrets. 500 years of Shouyuan, Su Qin was extremely envious. Although Su Qin has cultivated invincible Vajra divine art to great accomplishment and his body is always at its peak state, he is one of the few grade 1 great grandmasters who can live for 200 years. But how can a 200-year Shouyuan be compared to a 500-year Shouyuan? The latter was more than twice as much as the former. Attaining the fruit of Arhat, Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. Ever since Su Qin entered rank 1, he could clearly feel that his cultivation speed had slowed down. Forget it. Take your time. I'm only 20 years old now. I can still live for 180 years. I don't believe that I can't grind it out. Su Qin thought silently. At this moment, Su Qin had already entered the scripture depository. System sign in. Su Qin muttered. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the secret art Formless Finger of Tribulation. Formless Finger of Calamity? Su Qin was overjoyed. Among the many secret techniques of the Shaolin Temple, the Formless Finger of Disaster was one of the best techniques for killing. Once it was mastered, it could condense the formless force of disaster and kill people from a distance. Wang. In an instant, a large amount of insights about the Formless Finger of Disaster poured into Su Qin's mind. The Formless Finger of Disaster wasn't the strongest technique like the Buddha's palm. With Su Qin's strength as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, he had already comprehended this secret technique to the great accomplishment stage after being instilled by the system. Formless and formless. Killing with the force of disaster. I wonder what kind of mentality the senior who created this secret technique had. Su Qin smiled slightly. There was a faint force of disaster lingering between his fingers. At this moment, as long as he wanted to, he could use the Formless Finger of Disaster to kill people from 1,000 meters away. Suddenly, at this moment, Su Qin's expression changed. Someone actually sneaked into the Shaolin Temple? Shay. At the same time, a black shadow quietly came outside the scripture depository. The sect master has gone berserk and is difficult to recover. It is said that the I Ching Jing of the Shaolin Temple is a miraculous technique in the world, and can heal most injuries. As long as I steal the I Ching Jing, as the sect master said, I will definitely be rewarded when I return. The black shadow murmured to himself. The Shaolin Temple was a great sect in the world, but in recent decades, it had declined and attracted the attention of many forces in Jianghu, including the demon sect behind the Black Shadow. This time, the demon sect's sect master asked the Black Shadow to come. In addition to wanting to get the I Ching Jing to heal his injuries, he also wanted to test the Shaolin Temple. Moreover, in addition to the I Ching Jing, the 72 secret techniques of the Shaolin Temple are famous in Jianghu. If I can get a few of them, won't I have hope of going further? A trace of greed flashed in the Black Shadow's eyes. In martial arts cultivation, in addition to having enough talent, it also requires enough opportunities in the outside world. In the Black Shadow's view, the scripture depository in front of him at this moment was his great opportunity. Just as the Black Shadow was about to explore the scripture depository, then, he saw a sweeping monk in a gray robe slowly walking out. A sweeping monk? Unlucky he actually came out at this time. The Black Shadow frowned and could only endure secretly. He wanted to wait until the sweeping monk left before sneaking into the scripture depository. The Black Shadow's secret art was special. When it was fully operated, it was almost integrated with the shadow. Even if it was a martial artist in the upper realm, they would ignore it if they were not careful. This was also the reason why the demon sect's sect master sent the Black Shadow. In terms of hiding methods, the Black Shadow was almost one of the top few under the upper realm. However, the Black Shadow waited for half an hour, but found that the sweeping monk not only did not leave, but also swept the floor nearby. Moreover, the Black Shadow didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but he always felt that the sweeping monk was intentionally or unintentionally avoiding him during the sweeping process. This sweeping monk, did he find me? The Black Shadow was bewildered, and a faint killing intent rose in his heart. If it was as he thought, this sweeping monk couldn't be let go. If the other party left and attracted the attention of the abbot of the Shaolin Temple, wouldn't it ruin his plan to steal the I Ching Jing? Thinking of this, the Black Shadow decided to go all out. He was ready to kill the sweeping monk first, and then enter the scripture depository, only to hear a sigh in his ear. This is an important place of the Shaolin Temple. Your Excellency has violated the commandments by sneaking in without permission. Who's talking? The Black Shadow only felt a buzzing sound in his ears, and directly fell out of the stealth state with a look of horror. He didn't think that someone could force him out with just a voice. What kind of strength is this? Grade 3? Grade 2? Or even the Black Shadow didn't dare to continue thinking. However, what made the Black Shadow even more incredible was that at this moment, the sweeping monk in a gray robe not far away slowly raised his head and his eyes fell on him. It's you. At this moment, the Black Shadow's expression changed. and he stared straight at the sweeping monk. In the black shadow's perception, the sweeping monk in front of him was ordinary, without any fluctuations of internal strength. From beginning to end, he was just an ordinary person. If it was before, the black shadow might really think that the other party was an ordinary person. But now the black shadow didn't even have this thought. Could an ordinary person see through his stealth? Could an ordinary person force him to show up with just a few words? The black shadow's scalp went numb, and he was so scared that he almost fled on the spot. Su Qin was a little helpless. If the black shadow directly entered the scripture depository, Su Qin would definitely pretend that he didn't see it. As long as the other party didn't destroy the scripture depository, Su Qin couldn't be bothered to interfere. Chapter 13. Outside the scripture pavilion. The shadow's back quickly broke out in cold sweat. However, even so, the shadow still did not dare to move. Even his breathing was faint, for fear of disturbing Su Qin. As a member of the demon sect, the shadow knew very well that he had taken a great risk in sneaking into the Shaolin temple. But the shadow had no choice. The sect master's orders cannot be disobeyed. Plus he had some thoughts, so he forced himself to come. Originally, the shadow thought that even if he did not steal the Yi Jing Jing in the end with his stealth, there should be no problem for him to retreat. But the shadow did not expect that before he even entered the scripture pavilion, he would be forced to show up. The Shaolin temple is too terrifying. Just a random sweeping monk has such strength? The shadow felt bitter in his heart. Su Qin didn't know what the shadow was thinking, but he could see that the shadow should be very nervous at this moment. The internal strength in his body was running wildly and could erupt at any time. It's just that this did not arouse Su Qin's interest at all. If the shadow was a grade 1 great grandmaster, Su Qin would be more serious. However, the shadow was just a grade 4 martial artist, not even grade 3. Even if he erupts, Su Qin can kill him with a slap. No, I can't drag it on like this. The shadow's thoughts turned sharply, thinking about his situation. The scripture pavilion is an important place of the Shaolin temple. There are monks patrolling the area at all times. The shadow took advantage of the gap to sneak in. But the time left for him is certainly not too long. If he continues to drag it on, even if Su Qin doesn't do anything, the patrolling monks will find him. At that time, Black Shadow will face the pursuit of the Shaolin temple, a great sect. Thinking of this, the shadow gritted his teeth. Fight! 3 silver needles quietly appeared in the shadow's right hand. These 3 silver needles are made of dark iron, and are designed to break through internal strength protection. Even martial artists in the upper realm will suffer if they are not prepared. Go for me. A trace of distress flashed on the shadow's face. Whoosh! The 3 silver needles turned into a poisonous snake and rushed towards Su Qin. At this time, the shadow retreated and turned to flee outside the Shaolin temple. In a flash, the shadow had already escaped dozens of meters away. He didn't chase me? The shadow looked happy and subconsciously turned his head to look at Su Qin. Huh! The shadow's pupils shrank slightly. Because the 3 silver needles shot towards Su Qin with a bone-piercing chill, but Su Qin did not make any movement to dodge, as if he was scared silly. How is this possible? In the eyes of the shadow, Su Qin was at least a martial artist in the upper realm. Although the silver needles were silent, if a martial artist in the upper realm wanted to avoid it, it shouldn't be a problem. Did I see wrongly? Is this sweeping monk not an expert but an ordinary person? The black shadow was inwardly furious. The next moment, the silver needle silently pierced into Su Qin's chest. However, the image of the silver needles entering the body did not appear. Instead, the silver needles made of black iron turned into scrap iron and fell to the ground. The shadow was stunned. Then, a chill suddenly exploded in his mind. He blocked the black iron silver needles with his body? How is this possible? The shadow's heart trembled violently as if he saw a ghost. In an instant, the shadow desperately activated the forbidden technique, increased his speed to the extreme, and fled frantically. You want to run after making a move? Su Qin sneered and raised his right hand. Wisps of non-phase tribulation force collided with each other. Buzz! A wisp of non-phase tribulation force shot out, crossing hundreds of meters, and instantly blasted on the shadow's body. The shadow snorted. Not only did he not stop, but he used this force to escape at an even more terrifying speed. Seeing this scene, Suqin did not continue to chase. Instead, he bent down and picked up the silver needles that had turned into scrap iron. This should be the black iron that specializes in breaking a martial artist's inner force? Suqin sized it up and thought with interest. In today's world, although martial artists were rampant, they were not truly unscrupulous. For example, the black iron in front of him was the nemesis of martial artists. However, the production of black iron had always been low, and it was in the hands of the various countries. Ordinary martial artists could not see it. Suqin looked at it for a while, then with a pinch of his hand, he crushed the fragments of the silver needles into powder and sprinkled it on the ground, scattering it with the wind. It was true that black iron was used to break through a martial artist's internal strength, but Suqin had already reached the great accomplishment stage of invincible Vajra divine art. His body had reached the peak of yang and was invincible. How could black iron shake him? Besides, even if Suqin did not master the invincible Vajra divine art, with his powerful inner force of a first-grade martial artist, the black iron could not do anything to him. Although the black iron restrained a martial artist's inner force, any restraint was relative. It was like water restraining fire. But if one used a small bowl of water to face a monstrous fire, what would they use to restrain it? Half a day later, hundreds of miles away from the Shaolin Temple, in a gloomy hall. This hall was located in a remote area, and there was almost no one nearby, but it was a branch of the demon sect. At this moment, a group of people gathered in the hall, as if waiting for some news. Each of them had a strong aura. Obviously, they were all martial artists, and they were powerful martial artists. They were at least in the middle realm, and there were even some in the upper realm. Sect Master, you sent people to the Shaolin Temple to steal the Yi Jin Jing. I'm afraid this matter was not considered properly. No matter what, the Shaolin Temple is still a great sect of the world. A plump woman frowned and asked, "Huh, a great sect of the world?" At this time, a cold old man sneered. Since 60 years ago, the last first grade of the Shaolin Temple, a holy monk, passed away. The Shaolin Temple has not had a first grade for 60 years. Without a first grade, it does not deserve to be called a great sect of the world. When these words came out, suddenly, there was a sound of agreement in the hall. Yes, those bald donkeys in the Shaolin Temple, besides being able to recite scriptures, what else can they do? Not to mention that the sect master just sent people to take away the Yi Jin Jing. Even if it was to destroy the Shaolin Temple, what's so difficult about it? What the demon sect wants, the Shaolin Temple dares to refuse. The hall was in an uproar. After a while, the man in a purple robe sitting in the main seat of the hall said, "Okay, stop." As soon as the man in a purple robe spoke, the hall became quiet. I sent people to sneak into the Shaolin Temple. In addition to wanting to borrow the Yi Jin Jing to heal, I also wanted to use this to test the Shaolin Temple. When the purple-robed man said this, he paused for a moment before continuing. If we really get the Yi Jin Jing, it will prove that the Shaolin Temple has completely declined. It's just a facade, and the demon sect will attack the Shaolin Temple soon. When these words came out, everyone in the hall was amazed. The sect master's plan is really far-reaching. Those bald donkeys in the Shaolin Temple, I'm afraid they don't even know that their every move has been calculated by the sect master. The man in a purple robe smiled slightly and did not continue. At this moment, a black shadow staggered into the hall. "You're back? Did you get the Yi Jin Jing?" The man in a purple robe recognized the black shadow and asked lightly. Sect master. The black shadow opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but his face was as pale as a sheet. "Are you injured?" The man in a purple robe frowned. When the others in the hall saw this scene, they were immediately dissatisfied. The Shaolin Temple is really bold. How dare they hurt our demon sect people? Sect master, as long as you give the order now, we will join forces to attack the Shaolin Temple and kill them all. Yes, sect master, give the order quickly. Many demon sect martial artists clamored. However, compared to these demon sect martial artists, the man in a purple robe sitting in the main seat felt that something was wrong. Whoosh! The man in a purple robe took a step forward and appeared in front of the black shadow. Who hurt you? The man in a purple robe stretched out his right hand, wanting to check the Black Shadow's injury. However, just as the man in a purple robe circulated his internal force to explore the Black Shadow's body, he seemed to have touched something. A wisp of aura suddenly burst out, penetrating the Black Shadow's body and turning into a finger force, silently pressing towards the man in a purple robe. The man in a purple robe's expression changed. He subconsciously raised his hand to block it. Boom! A terrifying shock came. The man in a purple robe retreated 8 steps and finally spat out a mouthful of blood before barely stopping. 100 miles away, the change is at the heart. This is a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster using someone else's hand to warn the demon sect. The man in a purple robe suddenly raised his head, looking at the Black Shadow whose aura was cut off, and muttered to himself. As soon as these words came out, there was dead silence in the hall. Chapter 14. The Great Hall was dark. Many demon sect martial artists looked panicked. How could they have expected that a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would take action? Isn't it said that the Shaolin Temple doesn't have a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster? A cold old man said bitterly. Just now he had said that he would destroy the Shaolin Temple, but at this moment, he didn't dare to say a word. It must be known that a Shaolin Temple with a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and a Shaolin Temple without a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster are two completely different concepts. Sect Master, are you okay? The plump woman looked at the purple-robed man and couldn't help but ask. I'm fine. The purple-robed man's aura calmed down. A Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is indeed powerful, but it is impossible for him to kill me from hundreds of miles away. The purple-robed man's tone contained great confidence. He is a peak Grade 2 martial artist. If he was not eager for quick success and wanted to enter Grade 1 as soon as possible, he would not have suffered cultivation deviation and needed the Shaolin Temple's Yi Jin Jing to heal. But even if he suffered cultivation deviation, the purple-robed man is not weaker than an ordinary Grade 2 martial artist. Since the Shaolin Temple has a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and used his hand to warn the demon sect, some plans have to be changed. The purple-robed man sat back on the seat of honor and said lightly. When the other demon sect martial artists heard this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Since 50 years ago, the demon sect master went into seclusion to break through the illusory legend realm. In the past 50 years, the demon sect has lost a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and its power has shrunk sharply. If it weren't for this generation's demon sect master's great talent and vision, the demon sect would have long been hated by everyone. But even so, no one in the hall is willing to face a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. What is the sect master going to do? The plump woman asked. Since the Shaolin Temple is not good, then choose Giant Sun Mountain. The purple-robed man thought for a while and said, Giant Sun Mountain? Many demon sect martial artists in the Great Hall looked at each other. Compared to Shaolin Temple, a major martial arts sect that had existed for thousands of years, Giant Sun Mountain's foundation was much weaker. But in any case, Giant Sun Mountain is a force that once produced a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Although this generation is weak and there is no Grade 1, there are still a lot of good things in the mountain gate. I want to use the blood of several thousand disciples of Giant Sun Mountain as a sacrifice to heal my injuries. A hint of brutality flashed across the purple-robed man's eyes. Shaolin Temple. Su Qin naturally didn't know that because of his casual actions, Giant Sun Mountain was about to face a calamity of destruction. At this moment, Su Qin had already returned to the Chore's courtyard. When the formless finger force that he had left in the black figure exploded, Su Qin raised his head as if he had sensed something. The formless finger of disaster is formless and formless. It can change according to one's will. As expected of the Shaolin Temple's secret technique. Su Qin nodded slightly. In the past 10 years, Su Qin has been signing in everywhere in the Shaolin Temple and obtained many secret techniques, but the formless finger of disaster is very rare. Based on this alone, the formless finger of disaster is enough to rank in the top 800 among Su Qin's secret techniques. But I am already Grade 1, why can't I use Buddha's palm? Su Qin rubbed his eyebrows and thought helplessly. As the Shaolin Temple's strongest divine art, Su Qin has great expectations for Buddha's palm. When he was in the lower and middle realms, Su Qin thought that his strength was low and did not reach the minimum standard to use Buddha's palm. But now, Su Qin is already grade 1. Even in the world he is a top powerhouse. But the golden body of Buddha in the depths of Su Qin's mud pill palace, which represents the inheritance of Buddha's palm, is still standing firm. Could it be that Buddha's palm is an arhat-level divine art, and only those who have truly attained the arhat level are qualified to comprehend and use it? Su Qin guessed in his heart. In fact, according to what Su Qin has heard in the Shaolin Temple for the past 10 years, even 900 years ago, when Buddha's palm was not lost, almost no disciple of the Shaolin Temple could comprehend this strongest divine art. Forget it. Let's not think about it anymore. Su Qin shook his head and shook off the distracting thoughts in his heart. In the next half a month, Su Qin returned to his previous life, sweeping the floor and signing in when he had nothing to do. After entering grade 1, Su Qin's cultivation progress has significantly slowed down, but with a large number of heaven and earth treasures obtained from signing in, he is still slowly moving towards the real arhat level. On this day, Su Qin was just about to go to the Bodhi court to sign in when he heard other disciples whispering. I heard that the demon sect massacred the giant Sun Mountain. Hey, the world is not peaceful now, there is constant friction between countries, and disputes are everywhere. It is said that a rare genius appeared in the Wudong Mountain true martial lineage. He finished the Tai Chi Heart Road in 3 hours. Daoist Zhang personally came forward and accepted him as a pro-disciple. Amazing, Daoist Zhang is one of the few grade 1 great grandmasters in the world. Almost all of his pro-disciples have entered the upper realm. Many disciples of the handyman court were talking excitedly. This is also one of the few interests of the handyman court disciples. Unlike other courts, the handyman court does not need to practice martial arts, so in their spare time, they will discuss the world situation. It is said that the descendants of Shao Li's flying dagger have also appeared. What? Shao Li's flying dagger? Is it the Shao Li's flying dagger who is known as Never Miss, the flying dagger? Yes, the descendant of this generation of flying dagger has just been born, and he killed an upper realm evil martial artist with a flying dagger, causing a great disturbance. Not only Shao Li's flying dagger, but also another important Buddhist place like the Shaolin Temple, the Vajra Temple, has also produced a Buddha. Su Qin listened to the discussion of the disciples with great interest. In today's world, countries exist side by side, and there is endless chaos. Every day, martial artists' fallen sects are destroyed, and the Shaolin Temple, as a great sect with thousands of years of inheritance, is a pure land. At the very least, he will not be disturbed often. Su Qin felt more and more that his choice was correct. It is perfect to sign in at the Shaolin Temple and wait until he is invincible. It is still too dangerous outside. Su Qin slowly walked towards the Bodhi court, his thoughts fluctuating. Whether it is the genius of Wudong true martial lineage who completed the Tai Chi Heart Road, the descendant of Shao Li's flying dagger, or the Buddha of the Vajra Temple, they are all proud figures. They are either fully cultivated by their sects or have the support of their ancestors. Compared with them, Su Qin is just a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple. They didn't have any resources, and they didn't have any ancestors. External resources are very important for martial arts cultivation. Even if one is talented, if there is a lack of resources, their future achievements will be very limited. Although I, Su Qin, am alone and have no resource support, I have stepped into grade 1 step by step with my own efforts. I am not weaker than others. Su Qin walked to the Bodhi court and stopped. Chapter 15. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtain the medicinal pill, Spirit Accumulation Pill. Spirit Accumulation Pill? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. He was very satisfied. The Spirit Accumulation Pill is a very special kind of medicinal pill. It can neither strengthen the body like the marrow cleansing pill, nor can it strengthen the internal strength like the Great Revitalizing Pill. The Spirit Accumulation Pill has only one effect: nourishing divinity. What is divinity? In Su Qin's view, divinity is a general term for a person's essence, energy, and spirit. In Taoist terms, it is an illusory substance like the nascent soul. Generally speaking, ordinary martial artists, even if they are grade 2 martial artists, do not need to nourish divinity. because the fight between martial artists is basically a collision of the body and internal strength. As for divinity, even if it is a grade 1 great grandmaster, the divinity in their body is very weak. However, if a grade 1 great grandmaster wants to go further and achieve Arhat's fruit or enter the legend realm, they need to constantly nourish their divinity. The body of a martial artist in the upper realm is connected to heaven and earth, and is constantly being washed by the world's essence chi. Legends, on the other hand, have complete control of the world's essence chi, and can sweep away everything with a wave of their hand. Drawing the world's essence chi and controlling the world's essence chi are two completely different concepts. The latter is many times stronger than the former. And what does a martial artist rely on to control the world's essence chi? In front of the mighty world's essence chi, a martial artist's body is not worth mentioning. And if you want to completely control the world's essence chi, you can only rely on a powerful divinity. This is the case for Arhat's fruit, and the same is true for legends. That spirit accumulation pill that Su Qin obtained from signing in is a medicinal pill used to nourish divinity. In today's world, anything related to divinity is extremely rare, enough to cause a fight between two grade 1 great grandmasters. Not to mention the spirit accumulation pill, which can directly nourish divinity. Let's wait for a while. Once the spirit accumulation pill is taken, it cannot be stopped. If it is disturbed halfway, the efficacy will be greatly reduced. Su Qin thought silently. In any case, he had already endured 10 years. What difference would a few more days make? Su Qin is a very patient person. Otherwise, he would not have stayed in the Shaolin Temple after becoming a grade 1 great grandmaster, striving to be invincible in the world. Late at night, everything was silent. Su Qin quietly left the chores yard and came to a simple and crude secret room. This secret chamber was located underground and had been casually built by Su Qin over the past 10 years. Whoosh! Su Qin sat cross-legged, exhaled softly, and swallowed the divine accumulation pill. Boom! In an instant, Su Qin felt as if he was soaked in a hot spring. His whole body was warm and comfortable. Several hours later, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. Whoosh! An illusory bolt of lightning flashed across the secret chamber. Lightning from the void. This wasn't real lightning, but a phenomenon that would only occur when a god reached a certain level of strength. A single divine accumulation pill actually increased my spirit by 50%. Su Qin felt it carefully and nodded slightly. If there was no divine accumulation pill, Su Qin would have needed at least 5 years to grow his god to this extent. A divine accumulation pill saves Su Qin 5 years of hard work. At the same time, thousands of miles away from the Shaolin Temple, another majestic and solemn Buddhist place, the Vajra Temple, was located here. The Vajra Temple is also one of the great sects in the world. However, compared to the decline of the Shaolin Temple, the Vajra Temple is in a period of prosperity. The current abbot of the Vajra Temple is a famous grade 1A holy monk, and at this moment, under the golden body of the Buddha enshrined in the Vajra Temple, the abbot looked at a young monk with a pious face and said with satisfaction, "Batua, you have read all the Buddhist scriptures in the temple. Now the Vajra Temple has nothing to teach you. Let's go down the mountain. Go to the north." The Shaolin Temple in the north is the head of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world. It is said to have inherited the Buddha's palm. Although it has declined in recent years and the Buddha's palm has disappeared, it still has a strong foundation. Go to the Shaolin Temple and you will definitely gain something. The abbot looked at Batua and said slowly, although the abbot of the Vajra Temple is a grade 1A holy monk, when facing this young monk named Batua, he faintly felt like he was an equal. Because this young monk named Batu was very special. Batua was born in a small village outside the Vajra Temple. When he was born, the entire village was covered by faint Buddhist chants. When Batua was 3 years old, he often sat in front of the dilapidated Buddha statue in the village for an entire day. When the current abbot of the Vajra Temple found Batua, he was already 12 years old. At first glance, the abbot discovered that Batua had an extraordinary understanding of Buddhism and allowed him to enter the Vajra Temple. In the short 8 years since Batua entered the Vajra Temple, he had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the Vajra Temple and often debated with the senior monks of the temple. Even the abbot himself had lost to Batu. This was simply inconceivable. One had to know that the abbot was a grade 1A holy monk. His understanding of Buddhism was actually surpassed by Batua, who was only 20 years old. If this were to spread out, it would definitely shock a group of people to the point where their jaws would drop. Not only that, Batua had an extremely terrifying understanding of Buddhist techniques. In just 8 years after entering the Vajra temple, he had already entered the middle 3 realms. This almost made the abbot think that Batua was the reincarnation of one of the Buddhist arhat. It was precisely because of this that the abbot of the Vajra temple directly appointed Batua as this generation's bodhisattva, equivalent to the abbot's future successor. Shaolin Temple? Batua raised his head and looked directly at the abbot, his tone slightly puzzled. Correct. Yes, it is the Shaolin Temple. The abbot of the Vajra temple nodded. The Shaolin Temple has been passed down for thousands of years and has produced many arhat Buddhas. Its foundation is unfathomable. This time, you are going to the Shaolin Temple in the name of the Vajra temple to discuss Buddhism with the younger generation of the Shaolin Temple. The abbot of the Vajra temple smiled. Every few decades, the 4 Buddhist temples in the world would have an exchange which was called on Buddhism. The reason why the Shaolin Temple was the head of the 4 temples in the world was because the Shaolin Temple always had the advantage in the previous on Buddhism. But this time, the abbot of the Vajra temple was very much looking forward to seeing what kind of disciple the Shaolin Temple would bring to face Batu. Yes, abbot. Batu bowed slightly and replied. Remember, although Buddhism pursues being aloof from worldly affairs, this on Buddhism is different. On Buddhism is a battle of ideals between the 4 Buddhist temples. You can only win, not lose. The abbot of the Vajra temple reminded. Understood, abbot. Batua turned around and left, starting to prepare for the trip to the Shaolin temple. After Batua left, the abbot of the Vajra temple stood under the golden Buddha with a smile on his face. Chapter 16. Time flew by. Another half a month passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, many major events happened in the world, but it did not affect the Shaolin Temple at all. Su Qin's life was still the same as before. He signed in on time every day and listened to the gossip of the Chor's court disciples. However, on this day, Su Qin's peaceful days were broken. 9 monks from the Vajra temple came to the Shaolin Temple. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads personally greeted them outside the Great Strength Hall to show their respect. The disciples of the various courts also stood outside the Great Strength Hall. Vajra Temple? Su Qin looked at the 9 monks from the Vajra Temple. The leader of the 9 monks was very young, about 20 years old, and looked solemn. As for the other 8, Su Qin looked at the monk standing behind the young monk. He was wearing a red robe and a crown. This monk's aura was no weaker than Abbot Huiwen's. He was a 2nd-grade grandmaster. As for the other 7 monks, although their auras were different, but overall they were all middle realm martial artists. What a big show! Su Qin muttered in his heart. Although he did not know the purpose of the Vajra temple, it was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. Sure enough, Su Qin soon learned from the whispers of the disciples that this group of Vajra temple monks came here to discuss Buddhism with the Shaolin temple. Did you see that? The young monk at the front is the Buddha of the Vajra temple, Batu. He has deep Buddhist roots. It is said that this Buddha was born with a vision of Buddhism. There's also a rumor that this arhat is the reincarnation of an arhat of Buddhism. If the other party is really the reincarnation of arhat, wouldn't the Shaolin temple have no chance of winning? Let's wait and see. Maybe the abbot and the court heads have a way? Many disciples of the Shaolin temple whispered. Even the Chor's Yard disciples were worried sick at heart. As disciples of the Shaolin temple, they had long shared the honor and disgrace of the Shaolin temple. Naturally, they couldn't bear to see the Shaolin temple lose to the Jingang temple. Namo Amitba. Abbot Huiwen put his palms together and said, "You have all come from afar. The Shaolin temple will naturally treat you well. Let's prepare the vegetarian meal." Batua, the bodhisattva of the Vajra temple, bowed slightly and said, "I've long heard that the abbot is an eminent monk of the Buddhist sections. Sorry to disturb you this time." After the vegetarian meal, Abbot Huiwen then began to discuss Buddhism. On Buddha was the tradition of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world. Only monks below the age of 20 could participate. In this way, they could measure the strength of the younger generation of the four Buddhist sects and confirm who was the head of the four Buddhist sects. Abbot Huiwen, Batu of the Vajra Temple, will participate in this on Buddha. At this moment, the second-rank monk in red robes with a crown on his head stood out and said. As soon as he said this, Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads frowned. After all, the rules of the Buddha Symposium in the past were that both sides would send out 9 disciples each, and they would discuss Buddha Symposium in turn before deciding the victor. But now the Vajra Temple only sent out Batu. It was obvious that they wanted to use Batu alone to deal with the 9 disciples of the Shaolin Temple. This was simply looking down on the Shaolin Temple. Even with Abbot Huiwen's cultivation, he didn't look right at this moment. The hot-tempered warrior monastery head glared at the 9 monks of the Vajra Temple. Facing the pressure of the Shaolin Temple, the second-rank monk of the Vajra Temple didn't care at all. On Buddha was a battle of Buddhist ideals between the Vajra Temple and the Shaolin Temple. They could only win and not lose. What was the big deal about angering the Shaolin Temple? And some of the Shaolin Temple disciples were even more indignant. Isn't the Vajra Temple too arrogant? They only sent 1 disciple to participate in on Buddha? That's right. The Shaolin Temple is a big martial arts sect in the world, the head of the 4 Buddhist temples. How dare the Vajra Temple send 1 disciple to compete with the 9 disciples of the Shaolin Temple on Buddha? Even if Batu is a bodhisattva, so what? It's not like the Shaolin Temple hasn't had a bodhisattva before. This is simply a provocation. Many disciples of the Shaolin Temple looked at the people of the Vajra Temple unkindly. It was said that Buddhism didn't pursue competitiveness. But at this moment the Vajra Temple was right in front of them. If they still pretended not to see it, they wouldn't be practicing Buddhism but practicing stone. Buddhism wasn't emotionless and desireless. There was also an angry Vajra in Buddhism. Only Su Qin still had a calm expression on his face, as if he was not moved at all. Namo Amitabha. Abbot Huiwen was silent for a moment and said, In that case, let's begin. As soon as Abbot Huiwen's voice faded, Batu of the Vajra Temple stepped forward and sat down cross-legged in front of the great Buddha hall. Zhenyuan. Abbot Huiwen said softly. A monk in a monk's robe walked out and stood in front of the great Buddha hall, facing Batu. It's Brother Zhenyuan. Brother Zhenyuan is the most valued disciple of the commandment yard. It's said that he has a profound understanding of Buddhism and often debates with the yard head. That's right. Brother Zhenyuan is going to suppress the Vajra Temple and let them know who the head of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world is. Many disciples of the Shaolin Temple were excited when they saw Zhenyuan step forward. Obviously, Zhenyuan, a disciple of the Shaolin Temple, had a special place in their hearts. Zhenyuan? Su Qin also looked at Zhenyuan. As a disciple of the Zhen generation, Su Qin had some impression of Zhenyuan. Brother Zhenguan, who do you think will win? Brother Zhenyuan or that bodhisattva? A disciple of the Chor's yard asked in a low voice. Su Qin had been in the temple for 10 years. Although he was still a sweeping monk, he obviously had some experience. Needless to say, senior brother Zhenyuan will definitely win. Before Su Qin could speak, another disciple next to him interjected. Su Qin heard this and shook his head slightly. The Vajra Temple had 9 spots, but they only sent Batu. There were only 2 possibilities. First, the Vajra Temple was stupid. Second, the Vajra Temple was confident that they would win. As long as Batua was there, it didn't matter if they sent 1 or 9 people. The Vajra Temple and the Shaolin Temple were the 4 Buddhist temples in the world. They were famous martial artists, so they couldn't be stupid. So there was only one possibility. The Vajra Temple was very confident in Batu. They were so confident that as long as the Shaolin Temple defeated Batua, the Vajra Temple would admit defeat. While Su Qin was thinking, the on Buddha between Batua and Zhenyuan began. Brother, you came from afar. Of course you will speak first. Zhenyuan said with a solemn face. The head of the commandment yard saw this and nodded secretly. Zhenyuan was the disciple he was most proud of. His understanding of Buddhism was better than ordinary people. Otherwise, the abbot wouldn't have sent Zhenyuan first. One had to know that the first drum of energy would weaken the second and exhaust the third. If the Shaolin Temple lost the first round, It would be a blow to the morale of the following disciples. Batuo didn't decline. He put his palms together and said, "This is what I heard. Buddha is here." Chapter 17. The result of the first on Buddha round was as Su Qin had expected. In less than 15 minutes, True Essence's face turned pale and he didn't know how to respond. Although True Essence was well versed in Buddhism, he had underestimated the arhat of the Diamond Temple. Batuo's every word seemed to have turned into a Buddhist mantra that was imprinted in his mind, until it turned into a Buddha mountain that crushed him. "I lost." True Essence got up, his eyes dimmed. The on Buddha round of the 4 Buddhist temples wasn't a pugilistic world duel, but the former was definitely more dangerous than the latter. Both sides of the duel would at most suffer physical injuries. As long as the injuries weren't too severe, it wasn't hard to recover. But on Buddha was a battle of ideals. Once one lost, although one's body would be fine, one's mind would be severely damaged. One might even fall into self-doubt and form an inner demon. Once the inner demon was formed, one might not be able to progress further for the rest of his life. As True Essence's battle ended, the disciples of the Shaolin Temple felt their hearts turn cold. They had high hopes for True Essence. They thought that with True Essence's understanding of Buddhism, even if he couldn't beat the arhat of the Diamond Temple, he wouldn't lose too badly. But in the end, True Essence didn't even last 15 minutes before he got up and admitted defeat. What did this mean? It meant that True Essence's understanding of Buddhism was far inferior to Batuo's. "Thank you." Batuo's expression didn't change. Instead, he put his hands together and bowed slightly to True Essence. "Abbot Huiwen, arrange for the next one." The second-rank monk of the Diamond Temple looked at Abbot Huiwen and said, "Humph." The head of the commandment yard snorted and looked at the gloomy True Essence with a pained expression. True Essence was his most valued disciple. How could he not be moved by such a blow? "Namo Amitba." Abbot Huiwen looked deeply at Batuo and said again, "Jinka." "Abbot." The second disciple of the Shaolin Temple got up and sat where True Essence had been sitting. The second round of on Buddha started again. "Boring." Su Qin watched for a while and felt rather bored, so he took the opportunity to slip out. The Chores Yard disciples were originally located in a corner. Coupled with the fact that Su Qin was extremely inconspicuous, no one noticed him. Initially, I thought that the Buddhists were aloof from worldly affairs. But by the looks of it, that wasn't the case. Su Qin first went to the scripture pavilion and used up today's sign and opportunity. Then he found a place where no one would disturb him and took a Yun spirit pill. Several hours later, Su Qin arrived at the Great Strength Hall once again. However, this time, Su Qin clearly felt that the atmosphere among the disciples was much more oppressive. "We've lost, we've all lost." A nearby disciple of the labor court muttered with a dazed gaze. "They all lost." Su Qin looked at the front of the grand hall. At this moment, Zhan Wu, a disciple of Abbot Huiwen, was sitting across from the arhat of Jingang Temple. Zhan Wu was the most outstanding disciple of the Zhan generation. He was accepted as a disciple by Abbot Huiwen as soon as he entered the temple, and Zhan Wu's performance did not disappoint Abbot Huiwen. Whether it was his understanding of Buddhism or his progress in Buddhist martial arts, he could be said to be the best of the younger generation of the Shaolin Temple. Even Abbot Huiwen was prepared to train Zhan Wu as the next abbot of Shaolin. According to previous rounds of On Buddha, disciples like Zhan Wu would definitely be placed last to play a role as a stabilizing force. But at this moment, Zhan Wu went on stage. There was only one possibility. The first 8 disciples of the Shaolin Temple who participated in On Buddha had all lost. So fast. Su Qin was slightly surprised. In less than half a day, the arhat of Jingang Temple had defeated 8 disciples of the Shaolin Temple in a row? No. It should be 9. Because at this moment, Zhan Wu was obviously at a disadvantage in On Buddha against Batuo. He could not hold on for long. Half an hour later. All Dharma is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew, like lightning. Batuo's words were like heavenly flowers. His tone was gentle as if he could cut off all worries, eliminate all demons, eliminate all karma and reach the shore. "Senior brother, thank you for letting me win." Batuo slowly got up, put his hands together, and said with a solemn expression. Zhenwu was still sitting cross-legged, but his face was as pale as paper. Obviously he had lost. Namo Umitba, the second-grade monk of the Jingang Temple, looked happy and recited a slogan. Suddenly, except for Abbot Huiwen, all the court heads in the field were in disbelief. They did not expect that the Shaolin Temple would lose when only one person from the Jingang Temple had participated on Buddha. For a moment, all the disciples of the Shaolin Temple felt sad. They felt that the face of the Shaolin Temple was trampled on by the Jingang Temple, but they could not resist. Because this was the truth. Ba Tuo, the Bodhisattva of the Jingang Temple, won 9 rounds in a row and won the On Buddha. Since the On Buddha is over, we will take our leave first. Thank you for disturbing the Shaolin Temple for so long. The second-grade monk of the Jingang Temple glanced at the audience. When he saw that no one dared to look at him, he slowly said. The court heads looked pale, and some of them even began to breathe unsteadily. After today, once the results of the On Buddha between the Shaolin Temple and the Jingang Temple spread, the title of the head of the 4 Buddhist temples of the Shaolin Temple would be handed over to the Jingang Temple. When they thought of the title that the ancestors of the eminent monks had obtained but lost because of the incompetence of the younger generation, all the disciples of the Shaolin Temple, including Abbot Huiwen, felt their hearts bleeding. Until the people of the Jingang Temple left, there was still silence outside the Hall of Great Strength. I am ashamed to face the ancestors. The court head of the Chores Hall looked up to the sky and sighed. His face suddenly turned red, and he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Court head, what happened to you? Junior brother, are you okay? Many disciples of the Chores Hall were shocked. Abbot Huiwen even took a step forward and appeared in front of the court head. He reached out his right hand. A moment later, Abbot Huiwen shook his head. Junior brother is fine. He is just too emotional, plus his qi and blood are declining. Not far away, Su Qin looked at the court head of the Chores Hall who had collapsed on the ground and was silent. For 10 years, the court head of the Chores Hall had been good to Su Qin. He often wanted to transfer Su Qin to the Arhat Hall or the Warrior Monastery, instead of being a sweeping monk. However, these good intentions were rejected by Su Qin. Is the reputation of the Shaolin Temple so important to you? Su Qin whispered to himself. The next moment, Su Qin turned and left. Outside the Shaolin Temple, the group of people from the Diamond Temple were heading in a certain direction. Ba Tuo, the abbot will be overjoyed when we return this time. If not for you, the Shaolin Temple would not have handed over the position of the head of the 4 Buddhist temples so easily. The second-rank monk of the Diamond Temple looked at Ba Tuo and said with relief. His name was Tong Ru, and he was the current guardian of the Diamond Temple with a second-rank cultivation. As the Arhat of the Diamond Temple, Ba Tuo naturally had someone protecting him, and Tong Ru was Ba Tuo's guardian. Uncle Master, is what we are doing really the right thing? Ba Tuo could not help but ask. Of course it is. Tong Ru said affirmatively. The battle of ideals is only about winning or losing, not right or wrong. Hearing this, Ba Tuo's eyes were filled with thoughts. Suddenly, at this moment, the guardian of the Diamond Temple, Tong Ru, seemed to have sensed something and looked up. Under a withered Bodhi tree, a young monk in gray robes was standing there silently. The guardian of the Diamond Temple, Tong Ru, frowned. You are a disciple of the Shaolin Temple? Tong Ru asked in a loud voice. This was the territory of the Shaolin Temple. Other than the Shaolin Temple, there were no monks from other temples. The young monk in gray robes nodded and then shook his head. This young monk was naturally Su Qin, who had arrived a long time ago. I have long heard that the Arhat of the Diamond Temple is the reincarnation of Arhat. I am here this time to discuss Buddhism with you. Su Qin said unhurriedly. Discuss Buddhism? Tong Ru was slightly stunned. My temple has already discussed Buddhism with you in the Shaolin Temple. The results are out, and Abbot Huiwen has no objections. Why are you here again? Uncle Master. Since you are a senior brother of the Shaolin Temple, let's discuss it again. Ba Tuo spoke and took a step forward. With a solemn expression he said, I wonder how senior brother will discuss the Dharma? We will discuss it as it should be. Su Qin smiled and said calmly. Ba Tuo clasped his hands and said, Senior brother, can you tell me what is Buddha? Batua had asked the same question in the Shaolin Temple just now. He had left the 9 Shaolin Temple at a loss. What was Buddha? The Buddha, in Buddhism, was naturally the Buddha. But who was the Buddha? A human? A god? A ghost? A demon? No one knew. No one dared to make wild guesses. Tong Ru, the guardian of the temple, shook his head. Even the abbot of the Diamond Temple was stumped by this question, let alone Su Qin. Tong Ru could naturally see that Su Qin's status in the Shaolin Temple was not high. Otherwise, he would not be wearing gray robes. The reason he stopped them here was probably because he was unwilling to accept the result. But so what if he was unwilling to accept the result? The younger generation of the Shaolin Temple was crushed by Batu of the Diamond Temple. Could it be that there was a disciple of the Shaolin Temple who could defeat Batua? How was that possible? What is Buddha? At this time Su Qin repeated in a low voice. His voice became louder and louder until it finally reverberated in everyone's ears. I am Buddha. Boom! As soon as these words came out, all the monks of the Diamond Temple, including the guardian of the temple, were stunned. They had never seen such an arrogant person who called himself Buddha. How dare you? The guardian of the temple, Tong Ru, suddenly reacted and was about to reprimand him. However, then, he saw a scene that he would never believe in his life. A golden Buddha suddenly appeared behind Su Qin. He pointed to the sky with one hand and touched the ground with the other. There was boundless zen in his solemnity. He spoke with a magnificent voice. In heaven and on earth only I am supreme. Under the Bodhi tree Su Qin walked 9 steps. Then he pointed to the sky with one hand and touched the ground with the other. He looked solemn. In heaven and on earth only I am supreme. This. All the monks of the Diamond Temple were stunned. Batua looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He trembled as he looked at Su Qin. Chapter 18. This is a Buddha. A true Buddha. Batua was in a daze. He had been a disciple of the Titanium Temple since he was young, and had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the temple. He had 1,000 imaginations of Buddha in his mind. But now only then did Batua realize just how wrong he was. A real Buddha with an immortal golden body was not something he could imagine. This is... The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, struggled out of his shock. His tone was filled with shock. The Buddha's light spread and illuminated the surroundings. Tong Ru felt that every strand of inner strength in his body was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Even moving was difficult, let alone circulating it. The other 7 disciples of the Titanium Temple were in an even worse state. They sat on the ground with blank faces. Time passed. After a while, the Buddha's light slowly dissipated. When the Buddha's light completely disappeared, the people of the Titanium Temple came to their senses. Where is that person? One of the disciples of the Titanium Temple muttered. When he said that, only then did they realize that there was no one under the Bodhi tree in the distance. The Shaolin Temple is unfathomable. The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, sighed with a complicated expression. At this moment, he only wanted to have a good chat with the person who was rumored to be the cause of the decline of the Shaolin Temple. How could the Shaolin Temple decline if it could produce such a young disciple, who could trigger such a magnificent Buddha's light? If it was declining, then the Titanium Temple might as well be destroyed. At this moment, a disciple of the Titanium Temple asked cautiously, "Did we win or lose this Buddha's discourse?" The other disciples' hearts tightened as they looked at Batua. Even the Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, looked at Batua. Win or lose? Batua smiled. How can we win when discussing Buddha's discourse? Martial uncle, let's return to the Titanium Temple. The Shaolin Temple lives up to its name. There's no need to think about it anymore. After Batua finished speaking, he walked toward the Titanium Temple. The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, sighed and followed him. The remaining 7 Vajra Temple's disciples looked at each other and followed behind Tong Ru, the temple guardian. The Titanium Temple. The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, told the abbot of the Vajra Temple everything that had happened. The abbot of the Titanium Temple was silent for a long time before he said softly, "Could it be that the Shaolin Temple of this generation is going to have a real Arhat?" Arhat. Tongru's expression was one of shock. Arhat of Buddhism was equivalent to a martial arts legend in Jianghu. He was a peerless existence that transcended the ninth-grade martial arts system. Every Arhat or martial arts legend represented absolute invincibility. When Su Qin returned to the Shaolin Temple, most of the disciples outside the Hall of Great Strength had been evacuated by Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. I didn't expect that just a little stimulation would cause such a huge reaction. Furthermore, it consumed more than half of my inner strength. Su Qin rubbed between his eyebrows and calmed down the golden Buddha that represented the inheritance of the Buddha's paw, in the depths of his primal aperture between his eyebrows. Just now, when he was discussing Buddhism with Ba Tuo, the Bodhisattva of the Vajra Temple, Su Qin thought of Buddha's palm. The Buddha's palm was known as the Buddha's personal inheritance. In today's world, there was probably no existence that was closer to Buddha than the Buddha's palm. Therefore, Su Qin slightly stimulated the primal aperture between his eyebrows. Although Su Qin still couldn't use the Buddha's palm, it didn't mean that he couldn't stimulate it. As a result, the moment Su Qin stimulated it, the golden Buddha appeared. In this way, it saved Su Qin a lot of trouble. What level of martial arts is the Buddha's palm? Su Qin once again had this doubt in his heart. Su Qin is a grade 1 great grandmaster and has a lot of internal strength, but even so, a little stimulation of the Buddha's palm consumed more than half of his internal strength. If he really wanted to use it, wouldn't he be sucked dry in an instant? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he returned to the handyman court. At this time, the handyman court head had woken up and his face was ruddy. However, Su Qin felt that the life aura of the court head had once again decreased a lot, and he was a little closer to the end of the Shoyuan's life. Su Qin guessed that the court head may pass away in 5 to 10 years at most. Sigh, Su Qin sighed in his heart, but stepped forward and asked, "Court head, are you okay?" "I'm fine." The court head waved his hand. "I was too emotional just now, but I'm much better now." Speaking of this, the court head paused and said with emotion, "I'm old, my vitality is declining. I have no choice but to accept it. In the next half a month." Abbot Huiwen of the Shaolin Temple and the court heads were waiting for the results of the On Buddha of the Vajra Temple. However, to Abbot Huiwen's surprise, the Vajra Temple was still silent even after a few months, as if they had never discussed On Buddha with the Shaolin Temple. Logically speaking, if the Vajra Temple won the On Buddha, they should have announced it. Why is there no reaction at all? The court head of the Commandment Court was puzzled. Although it was difficult to give up the position of the head of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world, a win was a win, and a loss was a loss. The Shaolin Temple disdained to deny this point. However, the premise that the Shaolin Temple did not deny it was that the Vajra Temple spread the result. Was it possible for the Shaolin Temple to take the initiative to say that they lost to the Vajra Temple? How could this be possible? As a major martial arts sect in the world, the Shaolin Temple also cared about their reputation. Besides, in the previous On Buddha sessions, it was always the winner who did this. What the hell is going on? Abbot Huiwen was also puzzled. Since the Vajra Temple did not say anything, Abbot Huiwen did not want to ask. As a result, most forces in the world did not know that the Shaolin Temple and the Vajra Temple had an On Buddha session. As for the small number of forces that knew a little about it, they thought that the Vajra Temple had lost and did not want to make it public. The Vajra Temple felt that they had lost to the Shaolin Temple. After waiting for a few months, they were also puzzled as to why the Shaolin Temple did not say anything about the On Buddha session. Regarding this result, the abbot of the Vajra Temple could only think that the Shaolin Temple was too lazy to care about it. And the culprit who caused all this, Su Qin, naturally returned to his usual days of signing in and sweeping the floor. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the cultivation technique, Withered Tree Divine Art. In front of the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion, Su Qin looked happy. The Withered Tree Divine Art was one of the unique techniques of the Shaolin Temple. Its greatest use was not for offense or defense, but for concealment and disguise. Once the Withered Tree Divine Art was cultivated to the advanced level, one could control one's own aura at will, truly becoming like a withered tree and ethereal. Not bad. The Withered Tree Divine Art and the indestructible Vajra Divine Art are a perfect match. Su Qin was very satisfied. Originally, the indestructible Vajra Divine Art could allow Su Qin to completely conceal his aura. Now with the addition of the withered tree divine art, how powerful would it be? Just as Su Qin was about to try the effect of the withered tree divine art, his expression suddenly changed. Huh. Chapter 19. If a disciple familiar with the Shaolin Temple was here, they would have noticed that Su Qin was looking in the direction of the Shaolin Temple's forbidden area, the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Su Qin has been in the Shaolin Temple for more than 10 years, and has visited almost the entire Shaolin Temple. There are only a few forbidden areas that he has not set foot in. The Back Mountain is one, and the Thousand Buddhas Hall is another. Whether it is the Back Mountain or the Thousand Buddhas Hall, Su Qin can sense the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. It is because of this that Su Qin did not approach. The Back Mountain is the place where the Shaolin Temple suppressed the Devil Buddha 900 years ago. Even now, there is still a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster guarding it. Su Qin does not find it strange. After all, according to Su Qin's understanding, the Demon Buddha 900 years ago was a powerful existence that could compete with an Arhat and was completely above Grade 1. In order to suppress this kind of devil, it is definitely difficult to rely on the seal alone. No matter how strong the seal is, it will eventually decline with the passage of time. At this time, someone needs to constantly perfect the seal so that it can always suppress the Devil Buddha. And with the power of the Devil Buddha, only a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster can barely get close without being affected. And this is under the premise that the Devil Buddha is suppressed by the seal. Finally, in order to ensure the absolute safety of the seal of the Devil Buddha, the Back Mountain is guarded by a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, a holy monk. This should be a top secret, and even the current abbot of the Shaolin Temple does not know about it. This is also the reason why the Shaolin Temple does not have a Grade 1A holy monk guarding it. In fact, the Shaolin Temple is a great sect that has been passed down for thousands of years. It is a Buddhist holy land that came out of Arhat. How could it not have any secrets? In addition to the Back Mountain, there is also the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Thousand Buddhas Hall. However, just now, Su Qin clearly felt that the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Thousand Buddhas Hall had suddenly dissipated. This kind of dissipation did not mean that it had disappeared. Instead, it was like a candle in the wind that had persisted for decades before finally being extinguished. Is he dead? Su Qin seemed to be deep in thought. The Thousand Buddhas Hall was a forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple, because it was the place where a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple passed away. Only a first-rank holy monk was qualified to enter the Thousand Buddhas Hall when Shouyuan's time was up. Do you want to go take a look and sign a contract? Su Qin stroked his chin as a thought occurred to him. The Thousand Buddhas Hall was one of the few places Su Qin had not set foot in. In other words, Su Qin had yet to sign in at the Thousand Buddha Palace. According to the aura, the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster must be dead. There should be no living things in the Thousand Buddhas Hall at this moment. Even if I go in, I won't be discovered. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he slowly pondered. Originally, even if the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Thousand Buddhas Hall was really dead, Su Qin would enter after a while to be on the safe side. But after signing in, Su Qin obtained the Withered Wood Divine Art. This Shaolin Temple's secret technique is good at concealment and disguise. Coupled with the great accomplishment of the invincible Vajra Divine Art, Su Qin is confident that even if he walked in front of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, as long as the other party did not see him with their own eyes, the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would not notice him, unless Su Qin deliberately leaked his aura. Let me familiarize myself with the Withered Wood Divine Art first. Su Qin's thoughts moved, and suddenly, everything about the Withered Wood Divine Art poured into his mind. In a short period of time, Su Qin's understanding of the Withered Wood Divine Art has reached an incredible level. Shaped like a dead tree, divine like nothingness, Su Qin's aura was faintly discernible and almost completely disappeared. Chirp chirp chirp. At this moment, several birds landed on Su Qin's shoulders. Obviously, they regarded Su Qin as a dead tree and did not find anything unusual. Phew. Inhale. While operating the Withered Wood Divine Art, Su Qin slowly used the great accomplishment of the invincible Vajra Divine Art to restrain his aura once again. Suddenly, several birds that landed on Su Qin's shoulders seemed to be frightened and quickly flew away. In the eyes of these birds, they completely lost their sense of Su Qin. At this moment, Suqin can't even be regarded as a dead tree. He can only be regarded as a mass of nothingness. Of course, in fact, Suqin still exists, but his aura has fundamentally disappeared. Not bad, not bad. Suqin exclaimed in his heart. I can enter the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Suqin suddenly made a decision. At night, Suqin avoided the patrolling monks and stood in front of the Thousand Buddhas Hall. After confirming that there was no one inside, Suqin pushed open the door and slowly walked in. The light in the hall was a bit dim, but Suqin, as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, has long been able to see things in the night. There are many Buddha statues in the Thousand Buddhas Hall, and under each Buddha statue is the place where a holy monk passed away. The Buddha statues are overlapping, and at a glance there are at least hundreds of them. I didn't expect that the Shaolin Temple would give birth to so many Grade 1A holy monk. Suqin looked emotional. One must know that in today's world, any Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is a peerless powerhouse whose name shakes the world. They are enough to take charge of a great sect. And the Shaolin Temple has given birth to hundreds of such Grade 1 Great Grandmasters? However, Suqin thought about it again and felt that it was normal. The Shaolin Temple has existed for thousands of years, and hundreds of Grade 1A holy monk are not that many. Suqin slowly walked towards the depths of the Thousand Buddhas Hall. With withered wood divine art, and invincible Vajra divine art, Suqin was like a ghost at this moment, without any movement. If one did not see it with their own eyes, even a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would not be able to detect it. Soon, Suqin walked to the deepest part of the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Not far away, a figure wearing cloth clothes was sitting there stiffly. There was no aura. Obviously, he was dead. Cloth clothes? Not a monk's robe. The Grade 1 hidden in the Thousand Buddhas Hall is not someone from the Shaolin Temple? Suqin was surprised. Originally, Suqin thought that the Grade 1 aura in the Thousand Buddhas Hall was a Grade 1A holy monk from the Shaolin Temple. But it seems that this is not the case. Interesting. Suqin did not approach immediately. A Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, even if he died, may leave something behind near his body. Although Suqin is not afraid, he is also afraid of trouble. Right? It just so happens that I am in the Thousand Buddhas Hall. I can sign in there. Suqin's eyes lit up. It was already late at night. It was the early morning of the second day, and the daily sign-in opportunity was refreshed. System, sign in for me, Suqin said in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the magic power True Eye. A mechanical and cold voice sounded in Suqin's ears. Magic power? True Eye. Suqin's pupils shrank. In the past 10 years, Suqin has signed in countless divine arts, spirit pills and heaven and earth treasures. But this is the first time he has heard of a magic power. Chapter 20. I didn't expect the Eye of Truth to be so terrifying. After a while, Suqin opened his eyes and exclaimed, according to the system, the Eye of Truth is not an offensive magic ability. It is more inclined to an auxiliary magic ability. With the Eye of Truth, Suqin can easily see through illusions and lock onto crises. Moreover, the Eye of Truth has a terrifying grasp of qi. As long as Suqin looks at it, even if it is hundreds of miles away, Suqin can lock onto its position by relying on qi. Of course, the most attractive thing to Suqin about the Eye of Truth is that it is a magic ability. What is a magic ability? No matter what kind of secret art it is, it requires internal strength, vitality, and other energy to be used. But even a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster's internal strength is not endless, and it is impossible to consume it without limit. As for vitality, it is even more so. Once vitality declines, even a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster's strength will be greatly reduced. But magic abilities are different. Magic abilities are like a person's instinct, like breathing. There is no such thing as consumption. In other words, as long as Suqin is willing, he can activate the Eye of Truth 24 hours a day. Because for Suqin, the Eye of Truth is like eating and drinking. There is no need to think at all. It is rumored that when a Buddhist cultivation technique is cultivated to the extreme, it will also give birth to various magic abilities, such as mind connection. Heavenly, Suqin's thoughts fluctuated. Let's try the effect of this Eye of Truth. Su Qin calmed down and his mind moved. Suddenly, Su Qin only felt a chill in his eyes. Everywhere he looked he could see everything. There was no blind spot. In addition, Su Qin faintly felt that countless qi was rising from all directions. These qi were either far or near, strong or weak, all fell into his eyes. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin turned his gaze and looked at the corpse of the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster not far away. At this moment, relying on the Eye of Truth, Su Qin almost instantly determined that the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster was really dead. Furthermore, he did not tamper with the corpse. At this moment, Su Qin found that the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster was holding a roll of animal skin in his hand. Su Qin flicked his finger, and the beast's skin fell to the ground. Su Qin picked up the animal skin and looked at it. I started learning martial arts at the age of 8 and traveled around the world. I entered the upper realm at the age of 38 and became Grade 1 at the age of 79. After that, I spent more than 100 years and was still stuck at Grade 1, regrettably unable to touch the bottleneck of the mythical realm. This scroll should record the life of the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, including his childhood experience, the ecstasy after becoming a martial artist, and the loneliness after finally entering Ranked 1. This Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is called Jiuqiu Sanren. Although he has no parents, his martial Dao aptitude is top-notch. Just by relying on a few incomplete cultivation methods, he was able to cultivate his internal strength. After that he soared. In just 70 years, he advanced by leaps and bounds, directly entering Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. When he first became a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and stood at the peak of the world, Jiuqiu Sanren was quite happy. He often exchanged pointers with other Grade 1 Great Grandmasters. But when he was 100 years old, Jiuqiu Sanren panicked. Although the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster Shou Yuan is far beyond ordinary people, his limit is only 200 years. If he wants to live longer, he can only go one step further and enter the rumored mythical realm. I heard that the Shaolin Temple has been passed down for thousands of years, and that the real Arhat came from there. In order to find a way to break through, I hid in the Thousand Buddhas Hall and thought hard day and night. However, when I was 170 years old, I thought that my internal strength and body had been polished to the limit, but I had no clue about the mythical realm. How can one break through the mythical realm? How did our ancestors manage to cross this bottleneck? The more he read the animal skin, the more sloppy the handwriting became. Endless unwillingness and despair hit him. Even Su Qin was silent. Jiuqiu Sanren should have sneaked in 60 years ago. At that time, the last Shaolin Temple, a holy monk, had just passed away. The Shaolin Temple no longer had a Grade 1, so he could hide until now. Su Qin sighed. Throughout the world, although a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is rare, there will be some born in every era. But a legend or a Buddhist Arhat equivalent to a legend cannot be found in an era or even several eras. Su Qin doesn't know about other places. At least in the Shaolin Temple, since the last ancestor Arhat died 900 years ago to suppress the Devil Buddha, no one has been able to achieve Arhat enlightenment. Of course, this is because the successor of the Devil Buddha only appears once in 100 years, which greatly drags down the heritage of the Shaolin Temple, but it also shows how difficult it is to achieve Arhat enlightenment. In the future, will I be like Jiuqiu Sanren, alone and waiting for death? Su Qin frowned slightly, and this thought suddenly flashed in his mind. But, as soon as this thought emerged, it was thrown away by Su Qin, because Jiuqiu Sanren can't be compared to him at all. Su Qin has the system and can sign in and get countless treasures. Even if it's a pile, he can still reach the legend realm. Besides, Jiuqiu Sanren didn't understand why he couldn't even break through the bottleneck until his death. But in Su Qin's eyes, Jiuqiu Sanren took the wrong path. Jiuqiu Sanren spent more than 100 years polishing his body and internal strength. But in fact, in order to enter the legend realm, in addition to polishing the body and internal strength to the extreme, you also need to perfect your divinity. Divinity, body, internal strength. Only by combining the three would there be a glimmer of hope of touching the bottleneck. In addition, what made Su Qin even more excited was that the Eye of Truth that he had just obtained from signing in could not only see external objects, but also observe his own body. Under the observation of the Eye of Truth, Su Qin's control of his qi, blood, internal strength, and divinity had reached an incredible level. Su Qin could clearly feel any inadequacies and defects in his body. Although the Eye of Truth couldn't directly help Su Qin make up for these shortcomings and flaws, it pointed out a direction for Su Qin. This was more important than Su Qin's sign-in and obtaining more divine arts and treasures. It was really right to come to the Thousand Buddhas Hall to sign in this time. Although I don't have the Eye of Truth, I am confident that I can take that step, but I will definitely take a lot of detours. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. He looked at Zhou Sanren's corpse. Don't worry, let me see the path that you haven't taken and the scenery that you haven't seen. After Su Qin finished speaking, he placed the animal skin in front of Zhou Sanren and turned to leave. As for Zhou Sanren's corpse, Su Qin didn't pay any attention to it. As a forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple, Thousand Buddhas Hall would be cleaned by special disciples every once in a while. When Zhou Sanren was alive, the disciples who came in to clean up wouldn't find him. But now that Zhou Sanren was dead, his corpse was there. The next time the disciples of the Shaolin Temple came in to clean up, they would naturally see it. Chapter 21. Demon Subduing Tower. As the forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple, the Demon Subduing Tower is divided into 9 floors. These 9 floors are not on the surface but underground. The 1st to 3rd floors suppress the devils of the lower realm, the 4th to 6th floors suppress the devils of the middle realm, and the 7th to 9th floors suppress the devils of the upper realm. However, in this era, there are very few devils of the upper realm suppressed by the Demon Subduing Tower. At this moment on the 2nd floor of the Demon Subduing Tower, a man who was leaning against a corner suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes there was a scarlet and tyrannical light. Ha 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 ha. This old ancestor has finally come in. The man looked at the other devils imprisoned in the Demon Subduing Tower, his eyes revealing a greedy look. He is a famous devil in Jianghu, known as Shui. A few years ago he changed his appearance and deliberately fell into the hands of the Shaolin Temple, in order to enter the Demon Subduing Tower. Most devil path martial artists like to devour the blood essence and vitality of others to make up for themselves. Shui is even more so. Shui's cultivation technique allows him to quickly improve his cultivation by devouring the blood essence of others. The stronger the target he devoured, the more power Shui would gain. Therefore, Shui began to pay attention to the martial artists of Jianghu. However, the martial artists were not fools. After experiencing Shui's sneak attack, they became vigilant. They called their friends and even their elders to ambush Shui. After suffering a few losses, Shui had to give up this idea. And at this time, Shui suddenly remembered that there are countless devils imprisoned in the Demon Subduing Tower of the Shaolin Temple. These devils are suppressed in the tower and imprisoned for life until they die of old age. After realizing this, Shui suddenly thought that if he sneaked into the Demon Subduing Tower and devoured the blood essence and vitality of the devils in the tower, wouldn't it be foolproof? Thinking of this, Shui began to plan how to sneak into the Demon Subduing Tower. The Shaolin Temple is a great sect in the world. Its heritage is unfathomable. Directly killing his way in is definitely not a good idea. The only way to go in is to take the initiative to fall into the hands of the Shaolin Temple, and then be imprisoned. Shui needs to do 2 things. First, he could not let the Shaolin Temple discover his identity. Otherwise, a martial artist of the upper realm would have personally crippled Shui's cultivation. The second was to find a way to enter and leave the demon suppressing pagoda. Otherwise, if he couldn't do this, even if Shui really swallowed all the blood essence and vitality in the tower, what was the use? The first point was easy for Shui. In the demonic path's mystic arts, there were many ways to change one's appearance. In order to be foolproof, Shui took the initiative to seal his own strength and pretended to be a little devil in the lower realm. As for the second point, Shui discovered from an ancient book that every full moon night, a temporary loophole would appear in the mechanism of the demon suppressing tower. After solving these 2 problems, Shui was successfully imprisoned on the 2nd floor of the devil suppressing pagoda. Ha ha ha! What delicious food! Shui licked his lips and looked at the demons imprisoned on the 2nd floor of the demon-suppressing pagoda, his face full of greed. Whoosh! Shui took a step forward and appeared in front of a devil, directly grabbing his neck. Whoosh! Shui took a deep breath. A look of horror appeared on the face of the devil in his hand, and his body withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than a moment, he turned into a dry corpse. In order to come in order to hide from the Shaolin Temple, I don't know how much I have paid. Now it's time to reap the harvest. Shurshue's aura rapidly expanded and spread wildly in all directions. Suddenly, many devils on the second floor began to be sucked dry one by one, turning into dry corpses. Soon, the other devils found that something was wrong and distanced themselves from Shurshui. Not good. Someone is attacking us. An old devil roared. Shurshui? Damn it, why is he on the second floor? Countless demons were shocked and furious, their faces filled with fear. With Shurshui's strength, even if he fell into the hands of the Shaolin Temple and was suppressed in the demon-suppressing pagoda, he would at least be on the 7th floor. Ha ha ha. Want to run? Can you run away? Quickly merge with this old ancestor. This old ancestor is still in a hurry to go to the next floor. Shurshui's aura was deep as he looked at all the devils indifferently. He took the initiative to be captured into the demon-suppressing pagoda. Naturally, he didn't only intend to devour the devils on the 1st floor. Shurshui's real goal was all the devils on the 9th floor of the demon-suppressing pagoda. Late at night, the bright moon hung high in the sky. Su Qin sat cross-legged and took long breaths. If there were martial artists in the upper realm present, they would be shocked to find that every time Su Qin inhaled, a large amount of world's essence qi would pour into his body. The amount of world's essence qi that Su Qin inhaled with just one breath was enough to burst the body of an ordinary martial artist in the upper realm. Although the martial artists in the upper realm have opened the heaven and earth bridge, their body was constantly being cleansed by world's essence qi. But that kind of cleansing was slight and gradual. It was like flowing water in a small river flowing slowly. But now the world's essence qi that Su Qin inhaled and exhaled was like a river or a lake, endless. Even those grade 1 great grandmasters would feel their scalp tingle when they see Su Qin inhaling and exhaling world's essence qi like this. After all, how violent is the world's essence qi? With this kind of endless world's essence qi, even a grade 1 great grandmaster may injure their body if they are not careful. Once the body is damaged, especially when inhaling and exhaling world's essence qi, the backlash will be endless. No grade 1 great grandmaster would dare to do this. Invincible Vajra divine art is worthy of being the Shaolin Temple's outer technique. Su Qin opened his eyes and thought silently in his heart. The great accomplishment of Invincible Vajra divine art allowed Su Qin to absorb world's essence qi unscrupulously without worrying about any hidden dangers. If it was before, I would definitely think that Invincible Vajra divine art was perfect without any flaws. But now with the eyes of truth, the shortcomings of Invincible Vajra divine art can be seen at a glance. Su Qin sighed softly, feeling the power of the eyes of truth more and more. The essence of Invincible Vajra divine art is the most yang and indestructible. However, in all things in the world, a lone yin cannot grow, and a lone yang cannot be born. If you want to live forever, you must combine yin and yang. Invincible Vajra divine art is indeed very strong, and it can enhance the body to the level of a martial artist in the upper realm. But it is too extreme. If Su Qin wants to go further and achieve the fruit of Arhat, it is definitely not possible to rely on Invincible Vajra divine art to temper his body. Chapter 22. Inattribute Body Tempering Technique? Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. The Shaolin Temple's cultivation technique focuses on yang, so it's really difficult to obtain an inattribute body tempering technique comparable to the Vajra body tempering technique. It seems that I have to go to the demon subduing tower to sign in more often. In the entire Shaolin Temple, only the demon subduing tower can sign in for divine arts and secret techniques, outside of the Shaolin Temple. However, the things that sign in from the demon subduing tower are basically related to the demonic path, so Su Qin only goes there occasionally. The next day, Su Qin took the initiative to go to the demon subduing tower to sweep the floor. The demon subduing tower is a forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple, where the demons who once wreaked havoc in the world are imprisoned. Therefore, there are monks patrolling outside the demon subduing tower at all times to ensure that there are no accidents. It's junior brother Su Qin. A patrolling monk saw Su Qin and greeted him with a smile. Su Qin has been in the temple for 10 years, and although he has always been a sweeping monk, he can barely be regarded as half an old man. Most of these patrolling monks knew Su Qin. After responding to them one by one, Su Qin came outside the demon-subduing tower. This demon-subduing tower? Su Qin frowned slightly. Under the insight of the Eye of Truth, Su Qin could clearly feel that the aura of the demons in the demon-subduing tower was rapidly decreasing. Are the demons inside fighting each other? Su Qin muttered in a low voice and didn't pay much attention to it. The demons who can be imprisoned in the demon-subduing tower are all guilty of heinous crimes. If it weren't for the mercy of the Shaolin Temple, these demons would have been killed on the spot in the hands of other righteous sections. Now Su Qin found that the demons in the tower were decreasing, so he naturally didn't bother to care. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the cultivation method, Demon Cloud Hand. A cold, mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Demon Cloud Hand? Su Qin nodded slightly. Although he didn't get the Yin attribute body refining technique that he wanted, this Demon Cloud Hand wasn't bad. It was not much weaker than the ordinary unique skills of the Shaolin Temple. If Su Qin could learn it, he would have another trump card. After that, Su Qin would come to the Devil Suppressing Pagoda once a day. It wasn't until more than a month later that Su Qin finally got what he wanted. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have obtained the cultivation technique, Lunar Body Refining Technique. Lunar Body Refining Art? Su Qin smiled. The lunar body refining technique was the fundamental cultivation method of a certain demonic sect, called the Lunar Sect 1,000 years ago. It was said to be able to draw the lunar essence of the moon into one's body. If one cultivated it to the highest level, one would be able to form the lunar body. Unfortunately, although the lunar body refining art had great potential, it was extremely difficult to get started. Over time, there was a gap in the disciples of the lunar sect, and it disappeared 1,000 years ago. Lunar Dharma Body? It should be equivalent to the invincible Vajra divine art at the highest level. Su Qin compared the lunar body refining art with the invincible Vajra divine art, and found that these two cultivation techniques were basically equivalent to cultivation techniques of the same level. In fact, the lunar body refining art was a little stronger than the invincible Vajra divine art. Not bad, not bad. It's you then. Su Qin was extremely satisfied. Although it was very difficult to get started with the lunar body refining art, Su Qin never thought about whether he could master it or not. Under the infusion of the system, there was no divine art that Su Qin couldn't master. However, most of the demons in the Devil Suppressing Pagoda should be dead by now, right? Su Qin turned his gaze slightly and looked at the Devil Suppressing Pagoda again. For more than a month, Su Qin came to the Devil Suppressing Pagoda every day to sign in, so he naturally knew the aura inside the Devil Suppressing Pagoda like the back of his hand. Under the insight of the Eye of Truth, there was only an extremely powerful aura left in the Devil Suppressing Pagoda at this moment. As for the other auras, they all disappeared. If it was at the beginning, Su Qin might have guessed that the demons in the Devil Suppressing Pagoda were fighting each other. But now, Su Qin smelled a conspiracy. It's probably the peak of grade 2, not grade 1. Su Qin carefully confirmed it and judged in his heart. The 9th floor of the Devil Suppressing Pagoda. Shi Shui was sitting cross-legged, and on his body Devil Qi was rolling, covering a radius of 10 meters around him. Ha 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 ha. I didn't expect that the 9th floor of the Shaolin Temple's Devil Suppressing Pagoda had suppressed several grade 1 great devils hundreds of years ago. Shi Shui's face was filled with ecstasy. Those famous grade 1 great devils had long died on the 9th floor of the Devil Suppressing Pagoda, but their bodies were still there. Devil Path martial artists use Devil Qi to refine their bodies. Even if they die, their own condensed Devil Qi will automatically attach to their bones. After devouring these grade 1 corpses, Shi Shui's strength advanced by leaps and bounds, and he even entered the peak of grade 2 in one fell swoop. Before Shi Shui entered the Devil Suppressing Pagoda, he was only a grade 3 devil. Now that he has devoured all the devils in the Devil Suppressing Pagoda, coupled with the corpses of the grade 1 great devils hundreds of years ago, he directly broke through a great realm and reached the peak of grade 2. As long as I go out and go into retreat for a while to digest what I have gained, I will definitely be able to break through the shackles and enter grade 1. Shi Shui suddenly opened his eyes, and a faint demonic light appeared. In today's world there are very few grade 1 great grandmasters, and all of them are giants. If Shi Shui can really step into grade 1, he will be able to cover the sky with one hand. As long as he is careful, he will not be besieged by several grade 1 great grandmasters. The Devil Sect master once forced this ancestor to work for him. Humph! When this ancestor goes out this time, I will let you see who is the real Devil Sect master. Shi Shui's eyes flashed with cruelty. It's almost time. I have to get out of the pagoda as soon as possible. Otherwise, if those bald donkeys of the Shaolin Temple discover something and block this ancestor in the pagoda, it will not be good. Shi Shui suddenly thought of something and immediately got up and quickly went to the first floor. Legend has it that the devil-suppressing pagoda was built by a certain arhat of the Shaolin Temple. There is a heaven and earth great array inside that is connected to the outside world. After entering the pagoda, even a grade 1 great grandmaster will be trapped here for life. Shi Shui thought quickly, but he still couldn't help but feel shocked. It's a pity that even the real arhat cannot withstand the power of time, let alone the array left by arhat. If the Shaolin Temple had a real grade 1, a holy monk, he would often perfect the heaven and earth great array in the devil-suppressing pagoda. Even if Shi Shui was brave, he would not dare to sneak in. Under normal circumstances, only arhat can break the heaven and earth great array. However, there was no grade 1a holy monk in this generation of the Shaolin Temple. At least on the surface there was no grade 1a holy monk. As a result, the heaven and earth great array in the devil-suppressing pagoda. As time passed, loopholes appeared. Old demon Shi Shui learned this secret from an ancient book. The owner of this ancient book was the successor of the Devil Buddha of the Shaolin Temple 100 years ago. 100 years ago, the Shaolin Temple had 4 holy monks, and their power was unparalleled. This successor of the Devil Buddha knew that the chances of destroying the Shaolin Temple were slim, so he spread some secrets of the Shaolin Temple. Even if he could not destroy the Shaolin Temple, he would still leave hidden dangers for the Shaolin Temple. The heaven and earth great array is really vast and endless. Shi Shui watched the operation of the heaven and earth great array for a long time and felt dizzy. The demonic qi in his body almost went berserk. However, in order to wait for the moment when the heaven and earth great formation was activated, Shi Shui could only force himself to look at it. Few days later, just when Shi Shui was about to fall asleep, suddenly, Wang! A faint ripple of energy was quickly transmitted over. This fluctuation was very obscure, almost as if it did not exist. It's coming. Chapter 23. Outside the demon-subduing tower. Hundreds of monks were constantly patrolling. The demon-subduing tower was a forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple. Whether it was day or night, there were at least 108 monks patrolling. These 108 monks could instantly form a large array, which was enough to trap ordinary martial artists in the upper realm for a short time. Senior brother. Why do I feel that the demon-subduing tower is a bit strange tonight? A young monk turned his head to look at the dark and deep demon-suppressing pagoda and said in a low voice, "Strange. What's so strange about it?" The monk called senior brother glared at him and reprimanded. "Do your thing properly, don't look around." "Okay." The young monk shrank his head. Suddenly, at this moment, buzz! The entire demon-subduing tower shook slightly. The 108 monks guarding outside the demon-subduing tower were shocked and subconsciously looked at the demon-subduing tower. What happened? Just now, I seemed to feel the demon-subduing tower shaking. Yes, I felt it too, but I thought it was an illusion. Shay. Many of the monks were bewildered. However, the next moment, crack, the door of the demon-subduing tower suddenly cracked open. A dark shadow instantly jumped out of this crack and stood outside the demon-subduing tower. It's out. It's finally out. Shi Shui was ecstatic. In fact, before deciding to enter the demon-subduing tower, Shi Shui hesitated whether to take this risk or not. After all, although the ancient book he got was conclusive and determined that the heaven and earth array in the demon-subduing tower had a loophole, but before personally trying it, who could be sure that what the ancient book said was true or false? This was the demon-subduing tower of the Shaolin Temple. Who knew how many famous great devils he had suppressed? Since these great devils were locked in the tower, they never came out. Did they not want to come out? No. These great devils couldn't come out at all. This showed how terrifying the demon-subduing tower was. But now, there was an ancient book that said that there was a loophole in the demon-subduing tower? If you say there is a loophole, then there will be a loophole? What if what the ancient book said is false? Then wouldn't he be jumping into the pit on his own initiative? However, in the end Shui decided to do so, because once he succeeded, he would be able to devour the countless devils imprisoned in the devil-suppressing pagoda, and Shui would have the opportunity to stand at the top of the world. Under this kind of temptation, how could Shui resist? Besides, the description of the demon-suppressing tower's loopholes in the ancient book was extremely detailed. It didn't seem like it was deliberately made up. Not good. A demon escape. Compared to Shui's ecstasy, the numerous monks guarding outside the demon-subduing tower turned pale with fright. For thousands of years, there had never been a precedent of a demon escaping from the demon-suppressing tower. Form the formation. The leading monk roared. Immediately, the 108 monks suppressed the shock in their hearts and quickly returned to their positions, forming layers upon layers of great arrays, trapping Shui in the center. A mere formation. I can break it with a flick of my finger. Shui smiled contemptuously. If it was before he entered the devil-suppressing pagoda, these array formations would have been able to trap him. But now, Shui was already at peak grade 2, and could enter the grade 1 Great Grandmaster realm at any time. Wanting to trap him with this array formation was tantamount to a fool's dream. Boom! The terrifying demonic chi shook and spread wildly in all directions. Whoosh! The great formation formed by the 108 monks was forcibly broken apart. The 108 monks were sent flying and smashed into the ground. They swallowed a mouthful of blood and fainted. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. From the shaking of the demon-suppressing pagoda to Shui's escape, to the breaking of the array formation, only a moment passed. Many of the monks only had time to form a formation before the formation was broken, and they all fainted. There was no time to pass the news to Abbot Huiwen and the court head. Unable to withstand a single blow, Shui retracted his right hand and felt the powerful power he controlled. His face was full of excitement. Humph! The Shaolin Temple is only a so-so. Shui sneered. It's time to go. Shui glanced around. After Shui escaped from the demon-suppressing pagoda, he did not give the patrolling monks any time and directly attacked, so they had no chance to spread the news of his escape. But the people of the Shaolin Temple were not fools. The demon-suppressing pagoda was a forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple. With such a big thing happening, even if they did not know about it now, someone would definitely notice it after a while. At that time, if Shui was still here, what awaited him would be the encirclement of Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. Old bald donkey Huiwen. Shui's expression was cold. In the entire Shaolin Temple, the only person Shui was afraid of was Abbot Huiwen. Shui was currently grade 2 and Abbot Huiwen was also grade 2. Although Shui was at peak grade 2, the Shaolin Temple's cultivation method restrained cultivation methods of the devil path. Coupled with the fact that this was the Shaolin Temple's territory, Shui was fighting alone. Once he was delayed, he was afraid that he would be in real danger. Although Shui was full of confidence at the moment, he also knew what choice was best for him. But before I leave, this ancestor wants to taste the blood essence of these bald donkeys from the Shaolin Temple. Shui looked at the 108 monks who had fainted and licked his lips. In the past, when Shui met the disciples of the Shaolin Temple, he would want to stay as far away as possible. How could he dare to provoke them? But at this moment his powerful strength gave him endless confidence. Coupled with his escape from the demon-suppressing pagoda, he already had an irreconcilable relationship with the Shaolin Temple. It did not matter if he devoured the blood essence of some Shaolin Temple disciples. Thinking of this, Shui took a step forward and appeared in front of a monk. This monk was the leader of the formation just now. He had grade 4 strength and abundant blood essence. He was Shui's favorite target to devour. Devil! Die! Suddenly the martial monk burst into action. His aura soared as he threw a punch at Shi Shui. So weak. Shi Shui seemed to have expected this. He raised his right hand and slowly pressed down. Boom! Terrifying devil chi shrouded and instantly suppressed the monk. Why don't you just let this ancestor devour you? Shi Shui shook his head slightly. Devil, I will die with you. The monk's eyes were bloodshot as he struggled to stand up. Shi Shui saw this scene and did not even bother to say a word. Just as Shi Shui was about to devour all the blood essence of the monks. Few miles away. On a hill. Sai, why do you have to be so ruthless? Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and sighed. Chapter 24. Am I going to die? In front of the demon-subduing tower, the monk who wanted to perish together with Shi Shui felt his qi and blood quickly draining away. This monk's name was Zhangji. Although he and Su Qin belonged to the Zhang generation, he entered the temple 30 years earlier. It's a pity that I couldn't protect my junior brothers. Zhangji was getting weaker and weaker. He reluctantly turned his head and looked at the other monks who had fainted. He knew very well that when Shi Shui devoured all of his vitality, these martial monks would most likely not be able to escape death. I can't die like this. I have to inform the abbot, inform the court head. Zhangji struggled to maintain his last trace of consciousness, as if he had a terminal lucidity. He looked up and looked outside. However, with this look, Zhangji saw a scene that he would never forget in his life. He saw a slender and vague figure walking towards the demon-subduing tower step by step. At first, this vague figure was still a kilometer away, but with every step it crossed hundreds of meters out of thin air. In just a moment it came to the front of the demon-subduing tower. Someone is coming? Zhangji's consciousness quickly fell into darkness. At the last moment before his consciousness fell into darkness, Zhangji suddenly heard Shi Shui's angry voice. Damn it! Who the hell are you? Shi. In front of the demon-subduing tower. Su Qin looked at Zhangji, who had fainted again, then turned his eyes and looked at Shi Shui, who was full of vigilance. Who are you? When did the Shaolin Temple have such a great master like you? Shi Shui's expression was dignified. Just now, Su Qin crushed his demonic aura with just a wave of his hand. His strength was terrifying. Before Shi Shui entered the demon-subduing tower, he had already checked all the martial artists in the upper realm of the Shaolin Temple. There was no such person as Su Qin. You don't need to know. Su Qin sighed softly. It wasn't easy to escape. Why didn't you leave the Shaolin Temple as soon as possible? Although Su Qin never regarded himself as a real senior monk, the 10-year vegetarian meal in the Shaolin Temple made Su Qin unable to watch the disciples of the Shaolin Temple being slaughtered. What's more, he had a good relationship with Zhangji. Do I need you to care about what I do? Shi Shui's ancestor slightly narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Although Su Qin posed a great threat to him, the devouring blood ancestor found that Su Qin looked very young. Such a young monk, even if he started practicing martial arts in his mother's womb, coupled with the various resources provided by the Shaolin Temple, he would at most be in the upper realm. How could he be an opponent with him? The reason why the demonic aura was broken by Su Qin just now was that his strength had skyrocketed, and he couldn't perfectly control his internal strength. You must be a genius secretly cultivated by the Shaolin Temple, right? Unfortunately, what this ancestor likes to kill the most is geniuses. Shi Shui's eyes were cruel, and the aura in his body surged again. Anyway, he was already at odds with the Shaolin Temple. In this case, killing a genius of the Shaolin Temple in advance was a good thing. Just now this ancestor's aura was unstable, and you caught a flaw. Now let's see if you can still break this ancestor's demonic aura. With each word of Shi Shui's ancestor, the pressure in the air became heavier. When he finished speaking, his field of vision was filled with demonic qi. Shi Shui used the secret art of the Grade 1 Great Demon on the 9th floor of the demon-subduing tower. Heavenly Demon Domain. This kind of domain can only be used by devils in the upper realm. It can communicate with heaven and earth and turn into a demonic domain. Inside the domain, Shi Shui's strength will skyrocket, and the enemy will be suppressed by the domain. Time is running out. Su Qin seemed to feel something and shook his head slightly. At this time, several auras were quickly approaching here. Obviously, Abbot Huiwen and several court heads found that something was wrong and were rushing towards the demon-subduing tower. Time is running out? Shishue was stunned, and then a sneer appeared on his face. Yes, you don't have much time. The next moment, Shishue stretched out his right hand and slowly pressed it towards Su Qin. Almost instantly, a large amount of demonic qi gathered and crushed down. This blow is the full strength of this ancestor. Even if it is not as good as an ordinary Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Shishue looked proud and was about to continue. However, what happened next made Shishue's face change greatly, as if he was being strangled by the throat. The demonic qi instantly evaporated and turned into nothingness when it came within 3 feet of Su Qin. Impossible! Impossible! Shishue was horrified, as if he had seen something incredible. Although it is said that Buddhist cultivation techniques can restrain demonic cultivation techniques, but no matter how restrained it is impossible to directly evaporate like this. This was no longer restraint. It was a crushing defeat, a complete and utter crushing defeat. However, before he could react, Su Qin took a step forward and appeared in front of him. Not good. Run! Shishue's scalp instantly exploded. At this moment, if Shishue did not know that Su Qin's strength was far above him, then he would be a fool. Grade 1. At least a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. When did the Shaolin Temple give birth to such a young Grade 1 Great Grandmaster? Shishue's heart was filled with endless regret at this moment. If he had known that there was a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Shaolin Temple, even if he had 10 times the courage, he would not dare to sneak into the Shaolin Temple. Too late. Seeing that Shishue wanted to run, Su Qin casually raised his right hand, formed a fist and lightly punched. This punch in Shishue's eyes was slow, as if a child was punching. But for some reason Shishue couldn't dodge this punch. It was as if he was carrying a huge force and could not move at all. Pucci! Under Shishue's desperate gaze, Su Qin's fist slowly imprinted on his body. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying fist force destroyed Shishue's internal organs and 8 extraordinary meridians. Shishue spurted out a mist of blood and slowly fell to the ground. After a while, whoosh! Abbot Huiwen appeared outside the demon-subduing tower. The demon-subduing tower is emitting demonic energy fluctuations. I'm afraid that the demon inside has escaped. Abbot Huiwen was worried and rushed over at his fastest speed. For thousands of years, the demon-subduing tower has been impregnable. There shouldn't be any problems. Abbot Huiwen's expression was ugly. If there is really a problem with the demon-subduing tower and the demon inside escaped, then it will be an unprecedented disaster for the entire Shaolin Temple. Those demons have been imprisoned for so many years. Their resentment towards the Shaolin Temple can be imagined. Once they are released, the first thing they will do will be to slaughter the Shaolin Temple. However, when Abbot Huiwen rushed to the demon-subduing tower and saw everything in front of him clearly, he was stunned. Although the 108 patrolling monks were lying on the ground unconscious, their breathing was stable, and they were obviously still alive. Chapter 25. What's going on? Abbot Huiwen's heart was full of doubts. This is Old Demon Shishue? Abbot Huiwen approached Old Demon Shishue, and his expression changed slightly. At this moment, although Old Demon Shishue had already changed his appearance, the demonic aura exuding from his body was extremely strong. In today's world, although there were some martial artists in the upper realm, each of them was famous, not to mention an upper realm demon. Abbot Huiwen only thought for a moment, and determined the identity of Old Demon Shishue through the aura on his body. Demon-subduing tower? Old Demon Shishue. Abbot Huiwen vaguely guessed something. Just as Abbot Huiwen was thinking, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the court heads also hurried over. Abbot, what's going on here? Why do I feel the aura of a demonic martial artist? The court head of Arhat Court glanced at the scene and couldn't help but ask. When the other court heads heard this, they immediately looked at Abbot Huiwen. In their view, Abbot Huiwen was the first to arrive here, so he should know more than them. I'm not much earlier than you guys. When I first arrived, the scene was already like this. Abbot Huiwen smiled bitterly and said the guess in his heart. What? Abbot, you mean this corpse belongs to Old Demon Shishue? The court head of Arhat Court was slightly surprised. According to the information collected by the Shaolin Temple, old demon Shui is just a third-grade demon, but the strength of this corpse is far from third grade, at least second grade, and even peak second grade is not impossible. The Dharma court head said slowly. When these words came out, the court heads on the scene suddenly changed color. What they cared about was not whether the corpse was a peak second grade or not. But if what the Dharma court head said was true, why would a peak second grade die here? The court heads had already checked the injuries of old demon Shui. His internal organs were instantly shattered. The existence that killed old demon Shui was obviously fatal. Who was it that could kill a peak rank 2 in an instant? Moreover, the court heads found a trace of deep fear on Shui's face. Obviously, Shui was in a state of incomparable despair before he died. To be able to make a peak rank 2 feel such despair that he couldn't even run away, the court heads felt a chill in their hearts. About Shui's strength, I'm afraid I know what's going on. At this time, Abbot Huiwen walked out of the demon subduing tower and said in a deep voice, Shui must have pretended to be a lower realm demon and deliberately allowed himself to be suppressed in the demon subduing tower. Then, he took the opportunity to devour the blood essence and vitality of all the demons in the tower, and his strength increased by leaps and bounds, Abbot Huiwen said slowly. The other academy heads nodded in agreement. Indeed, according to Abbot Huiwen's explanation, some things could be explained. However, but the most important thing couldn't be explained. The head of the Arhat courtyard asked, Abbot, why did Shui die here? Abbot Huiwen was silent. This was also what he didn't understand the most. With Shui's strength, even if it was him, he could only delay him at most. But if he wanted to kill him, especially in an instant, it was impossible. Could it be that a holy monk did it? The disciplinary court head guessed. Some time ago, the descendants of the Devil Buddha created havoc in the Shaolin Temple. It was because of a holy monk that the Shaolin Temple survived the disaster. At that time, everyone, including Abbot Huiwen, believed that the Shaolin Temple was secretly guarded by a holy monk. Now, Shui died inexplicably in front of the demon subduing tower, which made the disciplinary court head have this guess. In the entire Shaolin Temple, I'm afraid that only a holy monk has such strength. This is the only possibility. Abbot Huiwen nodded slightly. By the way, although these disciples are unconscious, their lives are not in danger. Abbot Huiwen walked to the front of Zhanji. Although some of their qi and blood were devoured, it didn't hurt their foundation. They will recover in a few months. Abbot Huiwen checked Zhanji's body and nodded. Wake up. Abbot Huiwen pointed between Zhanji's eyebrows and shouted in a low voice. Dong! A copper and aluminum bell rang in Zhanji's mind. Zhanji, whose consciousness had fallen into darkness, suddenly felt light. Abbot? Zhanji opened his eyes and saw Abbot Huiwen and the other courtyard heads. He subconsciously got up and saluted. Don't move. Your qi and blood are in deficit. You need to rest. Abbot Huiwen held Zhanji and said, Junior brothers, are you all right? Zhanji asked in a low voice. Don't worry. Abbot Huiwen smiled. With a holy monk's help, Shui died on the spot, and none of the disciples were injured. Abbot Huiwen's tone was full of respect. A holy monk's helped several times. First, he saved the Shaolin Temple from the descendants of the Devil Buddha, and now he killed Shui. Such kindness was enough for the Shaolin Temple to build a golden body for him and worship him for thousands of generations. A holy monk's ancestor? Zhanji was stunned. At the last moment when his consciousness fell into darkness, he did see someone coming. Although Zhanji could only see a vague shadow at that time, from the slender figure, he should not be too old. How could it be an ancestor? However, even if Zhanji had such doubts, he could only think that he was wrong when he saw the confident look of Abbot Huiwen and the other courtyard heads. Okay. In a few days, go to the Bodhi court and get a blood replenishing pill, Abbot Huiwen said. The blood replenishing pill is a kind of pill that specializes in replenishing blood. Zhanji's blood is deficient, and taking the blood replenishing pill can greatly speed up the recovery. Thank you, Abbot. Zhanji immediately thanked him. Just when Abbot Huiwen and the other courtyard heads were secretly guessing who a holy monk's ancestor was, Su Qin had returned to the Chor's court. When the matter was done, he left, hiding his merits and reputation. For the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin's several moves were tantamount to saving the lives of thousands of disciples of the Shaolin Temple and saving the Shaolin Temple from destruction. But in Su Qin's view, it was just a casual move that killed a few flies. Days like this sign in improve my strength and live leisurely is what I want. Su Qin was in a good mood. A few hours later, when the Shaolin Temple was quiet again, Su Qin quietly slipped out of the chores court and came to an empty hill. The bright moon hung high in the sky. The moonlight sprinkled down like a curtain. Su Qin sat cross-legged, and the lunar body refining art slowly operated. Endless power of the lunar body poured into his body and integrated into every part of his flesh. Sure enough, the combination of the lunar body refining art and the invincible Vajra divine art, the combination of the power of the lunar body and the power of the yang, has a miraculous effect in forging the body. Chapter 26. Since the great accomplishment of the invincible Vajra divine art a few years ago, Su Qin had not felt any significant improvement in his body. Even when he entered the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster realm, it was only a qualitative change in his internal strength and a slight strengthening of his body. This little enhancement for Su Qin was just a matter of time. But now, under the combination of the invincible Vajra divine art and the lunar body refining technique, Su Qin felt a long-lost transformation of his body. Whoosh! His blood surged and the power of yin and yang constantly collided and offset each other, giving birth to wisps of gray aura that quickly integrated into every part of Su Qin's body. Even Su Qin's Grade 1 Great Grandmaster's internal strength is gradually becoming purer. Even in the depths of his eyebrows, the golden Buddha began to emit a misty Buddha's aura, faintly echoing with his body. Internal strength and the body are originally one. A strong body can nurture internal strength, and pure internal strength can also nourish the body. After a few hours, Su Qin slowly stood up. Kacha kacha. Su Qin's body made the sound of bones colliding. Unfortunately, the lunar body refining technique must be used when the moonlight is at its peak. Su Qin raised his head slightly, looked at the gradually setting moon and sighed. I'll come back tomorrow night. Su Qin returned to the handyman court. After a night of cultivation, Su Qin was not the slightest bit tired. Instead, he was full of energy. A Grade 1 Great Grandmaster has begun to dabble in the cultivation of divinity. Even if he doesn't sleep for a month, it would not be a problem. What's more, Su Qin is not without rest. In the process of body forging, his divinity is also nourished. In front of the scripture pavilion, Su Qin said in his heart, "System, sign in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the cultivation technique Great Wisdom Palm." Great Wisdom Palm? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. The Prajna Zen Palm was a unique skill of the Shaolin Temple. Only the heads and the abbot were qualified to practice it. It was a secret skill of the Shaolin Temple. It is said that hundreds of years ago, a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple used the Great Wisdom Palm to suppress a famous Grade 1 Great Grandmaster at that time. Although the main reason for this was a holy monk's terrifying strength, the Prajna Zen Palm was not to be underestimated. The next moment, all the subtleties of the Prajna Zen Palm flowed into Su Qin's mind. In less than a moment, Su Qin seemed to have cultivated the Prajna Zen Palm for dozens of years, mastering this lost art in his heart. After signing in, Su Qin roughly cleaned up the place and then went to the first floor of the Sutra Pavilion to read some strange stories collected by the Shaolin Temple. The scripture depository was divided into 4 floors. The second to fourth floors contained all kinds of unique skills of the Shaolin Temple. Disciples who want to go to the second to fourth floors must get the permission of the abbot or the court heads. As for the first floor, it was written by some eminent monks who went down the mountain or brought back strange stories. It had nothing to do with martial arts or Buddhist scriptures. Therefore, any disciple can read the books on the first floor of the scripture depository. Although Su Qin was a sweeping monk, he was also a disciple of the Shaolin Temple. Naturally, he could also read it. Just as Su Qin was reading an unofficial history book with great interest, a voice suddenly rang out. "Junior brother Jingguan, you are here too?" A surprised voice came from the side. Su Qin looked up, put down the unofficial history book and said, "Senior brother Zhangji, The person who Su Qin was talking to was Zhangji, the patrolling monk of the demon-subduing tower. Next to Zhangji, there were several other patrolling monks. I'm in a deficit of blood. The court head said that it's not suitable for me to practice martial arts during this time, so I ran here to take a look. Zhangji explained. So that's how it is. Su Qin nodded slightly. At that time outside the demon-subduing tower, Zhangji's blood was indeed devoured by Shi Shui, but because Su Qin interrupted in time, his foundation was not hurt. Otherwise, if Su Qin arrived a little later, Zhangji's blood would not be in a deficit, but sucked dry. As for the several monks next to Zhangji, they were in a similar situation. Although they were not devoured, they still suffered some injuries and needed to rest for a while. They chatted for a while, and then talked about what happened in the demon-subduing tower last night. Sai, it was really dangerous. That Shi Shui was almost going to start a massacre. Zhangji said with a sigh. There was great terror between life and death. After Zhangji walked on the line between life and death, his temperament also changed slightly. Senior brother Zhangji, you were not in a coma at that time. Did you see the appearance of a holy monk? A monk next to him asked in a low voice. Hearing this, the eyes of the other monks suddenly lit up. At this moment, the deeds of a holy monk have already spread throughout the Shaolin Temple. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads did not stop it. After all, letting the disciples know that there is a grade 1A holy monk behind the Shaolin Temple can also play a motivating role. Appearance. Zhangji shook his head. I only saw a vague figure, and then I lost consciousness. Hearing this, Su Qin chuckled in his heart. When he appeared in front of the demon-subduing tower, he covered his whole body with internal force. Except for Shi Shui, no one could see his appearance. When the other monks heard this, they could only give up. However, although I did not see his appearance, I know the strength of a holy monk. Zhangji suddenly changed the topic and said, The strength of a holy monk? The martial monks blinked and asked with puzzled faces, Isn't Senior Holy Monk a grade 1 Great Grandmaster? He is indeed a grade 1 Great Grandmaster. When Zhangji said this, he paused and lowered his voice, but even among grade 1 Great Grandmasters, there is a difference in strength. For example, Daoist Zhang of Wudong Mountain's true martial lineage has suppressed the world for decades, and can even ignore the imperial power. There is also the imperial teacher of the Mengyuan Empire, who has the power of the dragon and elephant. He alone propped up the entire Mengyuan Empire. Zhangji's expression showed a hint of awe. Whether it is Daoist Zhang or the imperial teacher, they are all peak grade 1 Great Grandmasters in the world, and they may even touch the legendary mythical barrier. In front of such characters, ordinary grade 1 Great Grandmasters are indeed overshadowed. Senior brother Zhangji, what do you mean? The expressions of the monks next to him changed slightly. Although they were very grateful to a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple, they never thought about the level of strength of a holy monk. For these monks, even an ordinary grade 1 is far from what they can look up to, let alone a peak grade 1 like Daoist Zhang and the imperial teacher. Although I don't know the strength of Shi Shui, he was able to destroy the 108 Arhat formation in an instant. Even if he is not grade 1, he is not far from it. With such an existence, even if he really encounters a grade 1 Great Grandmaster, he still has some hope of escaping. Even if he can't escape, he will definitely experience a fierce battle. Zhangji exclaimed. But last night, Shi Shui died so suddenly, as if he encountered an enemy that was far from being able to resist. My guess is that the strength of a holy monk who killed Shi Shui is at least at the level of the imperial teacher and Daoist Zhang. When Zhangji said this, the monks looked at each other with shock on their faces. A peak grade 1 like Daoist Zhang and the imperial teacher? How is this possible? You don't believe me? Zhangji saw that the monks did not speak and became anxious. He looked at Su Qin, who had picked up the book again and was reading it with interest, and said, Chapter 27. Junior brother Zhengguan, what do you think? Is my guess reasonable? Zhangji glanced at the monks and then looked at Su Qin with expectation. Yeah, Su Qin put the history aside, thought for a while and said seriously, What you said makes sense. Junior brother Zhengguan knows me. Zhangji grinned. Next, Zhangji chatted for a while and then left with the monks. It wasn't until they left that Su Qin whispered to himself, Mengyuan imperial teacher? Taoist Zhang? Long before entering the Shaolin Temple, when Su Qin was still the family Su's third young master, he had heard of the names of these two. At that time, Su Qin only felt that these two people were very powerful. World's Peak Grade 1? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. Although Su Qin doesn't know whether he is the world's peak Grade 1, with the trump cards he has now, ordinary Grade 1 great grandmasters are really nothing in his eyes. Su Qin even has a feeling that when he refines his body to the extreme with invincible Vajra divine art and lunar body refining technique, he is afraid that his body alone will be enough to suppress an ordinary Grade 1 great grandmaster. Since Shi Shui escaped from the demon subduing tower, the Shaolin Temple realized that there were loopholes in the demon subduing tower and began to repair it. It just so happens that the demons in the tower have already been devoured by Shi Shui, saving the Shaolin Temple a lot of effort. A year passed in a blink of an eye. During this year, Su Qin returned to his previous life. During this period, in addition to signing in everywhere, Su Qin mainly focused on the cultivation of invincible Vajra divine art and lunar body refining technique. I finally reached the limit. Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and sighed. Since a year ago he discovered that lunar body refining technique and invincible Vajra divine art could transform his body again. Su Qin began this cultivation every night. Until now, the gray aura produced by the fusion of the lunar body refining art and the Vajra unbreakable force could no longer improve his physical body. Looks like even the fusion of yin and yang can't endlessly transform the body. Su Qin looked a little regretful. But now I can challenge a Grade 1 great grandmaster with just the power of my body. In other words, even if I stand still and let a Grade 1 great grandmaster attack, the other party still won't be able to break my defense? Su Qin thought silently. If he only relied on the invincible Vajra divine art, even if he cultivated it to great accomplishment, he would only be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with an ordinary upper realm cultivator. In other words, a rank 3 martial artist. But now, Su Qin combined the lunar body refining technique with it, and his physical body had soared to the level of a Grade 1 great grandmaster? If Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads knew about this, they would probably be so shocked that their eyeballs would pop out. Can he challenge a Grade 1 great grandmaster with just his physical body? What kind of terrifying physical body can do this? Even the imperial teacher, who is known to have the power of the dragon and elephant, may not be able to do this, right? How can I achieve the fruit of Arhat? Su Qin got up, looked up at the disappearing moon, and muttered to himself. Over the past year, Su Qin has taken at least hundreds of divine accumulation pills to constantly nourish his divinity. But so far, he still can't touch the bottleneck of the myth realm. There must be something that I haven't done to the extreme. Su Qin was not discouraged, because since his physical body has once again transformed to the extreme, he faintly felt that his shoyun seems to have been lengthened again. Generally speaking, the normal limit of a Grade 1 great grandmaster shoyun is 200 years. But at this moment, Su Qin's shoyun has directly doubled, reaching 400 years. 400 years of shoyun. It must be known that even if it is the real Arhat or a legend, the shoyun is only 500 years. It is almost the same as the current Su Qin. There is still a lot of time, I am not in a hurry. Su Qin thought of the Grade 1 great grandmaster Juku Sanrin, who died of old age in the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Although Juku Sanrin was a Grade 1 great grandmaster, he only lived for 160 years before dying of old age. Although a Grade 1 great grandmaster is known to have a limit of 200 years of shoyun, but there are very few Grade 1 great grandmasters who can really live for 200 years. The vast majority of Grade 1 great grandmasters only live for 150 years before they have to die because of internal injuries. The next day, after Su Qin signed in, he passed by the Great Strength Hall. Suddenly, at this moment, a jade chariot slowly came. The jade chariot was extremely gorgeous. It was carved with jade and dark golden lines spread out. Su Qin stopped and his eyes fell on an old eunuch wearing a red official uniform standing next to the jade chariot. Although the old eunuch was bent and his aura was not obvious, Su Qin could see at a glance that the other party was a Grade 2 martial artist. Eunuch Hong, what brings you here? Abbot Huiwen and the court heads looked solemnly at the old eunuch standing next to the jade chariot. The old eunuch named Eunuch Hong slowly stepped forward and said in a sharp voice, Imperial concubine Li worships Buddha. She heard that the Shaolin Temple is the holy land of Buddhism, so she wants to cultivate here for a while. As soon as Eunuch Hong's voice fell, the expressions of Abbot Huiwen and the court heads changed. Imperial concubine Li? The Emperor of Tang's favorite imperial concubine? Abbot Huiwen instinctively felt that this was a big trouble. Why did Imperial concubine Li not stay in the palace and serve the Emperor of Tang, but come to the Shaolin Temple for a rest? Eunuch Hong. The Shaolin Temple's commandment does not accept women. If Imperial concubine Li is really interested in Buddhism, this poor monk can make the decision and give some Buddhist scriptures to Imperial concubine Li. Abbot Huiwen immediately responded. Although the Shaolin Temple was a major martial arts sect, it did not want to get involved in the internal affairs of the palace. Especially this Imperial concubine Li seemed to have a bad relationship with the nobles in the palace. Now that the Emperor of Tang was in his old age, the situation in the court was unstable, and the princes were fighting openly and secretly. At this time, if the Shaolin Temple accepted Imperial concubine Li, it would be like taking the initiative to take over a hot potato. Humph! Eunuch Hong sneered. This is His Majesty's handwritten order. The Shaolin Temple dares to disobey? After Eunuch Hong finished speaking, he took out a golden scroll and looked coldly at Abbot Huiwen. The Emperor of Tang's handwritten order? Abbot Huiwen was silent. If it was only Imperial concubine Li who wanted to recuperate in the Shaolin Temple for a while, Abbot Huiwen could use the Shaolin Temple to stop her. After all, Imperial concubine Li was just a concubine in the palace. Even if His Majesty doted on her, what could she do? But if it was the Emperor of Tang's handwritten order, Abbot Huiwen would have to be careful. The Emperor of Tang's handwritten order represented the will of the Tang dynasty's emperor. If the Shaolin Temple refused, it would be equivalent to defying the Tang dynasty's emperor. For the Shaolin Temple, which was located in the Tang dynasty's territory, this was not worth it. After a long time, Abbot Huiwen forced a smile. Since it is His Majesty's will, Imperial concubine Li, please come in. Imperial concubine Li.